right, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for showing up today. Hopefully today will be relatively quick. We've got a quick script and then we'll get the meeting going. The Tattoo Course of Study Review Committee meeting is convening at 9:35 a.m. on Monday, December 15th, 2025. This meeting is being held in person and through Zoom video conference and is being recorded. The recording will be posted to the internet for public viewing, and I will now call roll. Adolfo Herrera. Cameron Straub.
Present.
Dan Gilsdorf. Present. Elaine Pandolfi.
Here.
Aaron Smith.
Here.
Jesse Preston.
Present.
Joseph Buck.
I'm here.
Josh Dill. Kat Pipkin.
Here.
Matthew Hodel.
Here.
Nico Capriati.
Here.
Olivia Brisson.
Here.
Pam Neighbors. He's here. Rebecca Flau.
Here.
Rebecca Marar.
Here.
Sean Ladus. Here. Taylor German.
Here.
And Tom Mullen. Here. All right, perfect. Members, when you wish to speak, please state your last name for the record. Committee members are asked to not use the chat feature during meetings. The Health Licensing Office asks that individuals attending through Zoom keep their phones muted and cameras off during the entire meeting or until they're given an opportunity to comment during the public and interested parties' feedback if indicated on the agenda. Public comments limited to matters listed on the meeting agenda or topics relevant to what this committee has authority to regulate. Public members wishing to speak, please sign in on the roster sheet available in the room or email Haley Revere at haley.revire@oha.oregon.gov and provide your first and last name. Everyone is asked to use appropriate language, manners, and protocols when conducting business. And meeting is called to order. All right, so I don't know if anyone has had a chance to look at the updated course of study that was sent out. If you would like, we can briefly go through it again. I will make a few notes about it. So one note we had, I think it was Olivia's recommendation, is that when talking about disinfectant, we go from the CDC guidelines. But we actually are going to go based off the board's definition because that is in role. So that's why that one did not change. And then the other thing is the use of topical anesthetic being out of the scope of practice. So after speaking with our policy analysts, since it's not listed specifically in statute, it's currently believed that it is not within the scope to use it. We're still working on getting advice from our DOJ just to make sure. But we did include some things in the course of study regarding that. And let me share my screen real quick. 8.8. A little bit bigger. So there was, 8.8 was one spot. I think we had one other section where we briefly mentioned it. So according to our policy analysts, it's okay to talk about the risks, the health concerns, and educate the client, but as of right now, it's not something that we can use on a client. So,
as far as it's not allowed to be used on clients at all while tattooing.
That's my understanding from our policy analyst is topical anesthetics were not listed in statute. But
That's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Affect a lot of people. Yeah. And also just does that mean that Bactine over the counter and as well as prescription strength, does that just gain all of it? I feel like that would be worth us diving into later.
Yeah, so
Figure out.
that I don't know at this point. Like I said, we're waiting on some legal advice from our attorney, and then after we get that, then we can make recommendations from there. So as of right now, we're gonna leave that section as is. Were there any other things that people had questions on or wanted to discuss? Nico?
Hi, yes, this Nico Capriotti. I was just hoping that in the topical anesthetics section, could we just put also like anesthesia or underdermal like injection anesthetics as well, just again to be like, hey, here are the risks of these, here are the dangers, even though again, it's not in our scope of practice by any means to use. Just noting that some people use underdermal and anesthesia as well.
Okay, so if we include that on this course of study, where would you recommend putting that?
I mean, I would probably still like maybe change the topic instead of topical anesthetics, maybe just to anesthetics
Okay,
and in general. And then you can have like a subsection that's just like topical, injectable, and I don't know, gaseous. I don't know what the other term would be.
topical, and then, what was the other one? Injectable. Okay, and I'll clean that all up.
Dan Gilsdorf here, if I may. Do we think that just keeping it broad and saying anesthetics is good enough for the purposes of the curriculum?
I would agree with that.
Since none of them are being used.
Since if the official line is that none of them are supposed to be used, then I think for the purposes of the curriculum especially, perhaps just a general mention for now would cover the bases.
Okay,
Can I say something?
yeah, go ahead, Pam.
Okay, so anesthetics, gaseous, general, locals, topicals, there's all different kinds, regionals. Topical anesthetics is the only thing that's used in this side. Anything beyond that is highly out of our scope of practice. But the anesthetics that we use topically in permanent makeup and tattooing are considered over the counter. They're allowable in almost every state in the country. We can't do what we do without them. Now it makes, I mean, you try doing, anybody that has any doubt, try getting your lips or your eyes done and not moving. So we have to have that. And as long as we stay within what is allowable for use for an over-the-counter topical anesthetic, because that's anything outside of that, we are not in our scope of practice.
This is Cameron Straub. I totally agree with Pamela. Everybody's using these now. We've got a concern if we're saying that we're not, at least for the over stuff. And I think because we're watching this stuff get out of date, we do need to also include injectable stuff because there's a trend now, although it's super expensive and it's all in other states. When we revisit this in 5 years, we're going to see that there's been a lot of people going to have more, what do you want to say, surgical type procedures done where they're put under anesthesia and tattooed by 3 or 4 artists for a whole day to get a back piece done. It's cringy, I know, to us, but it's becoming a thing. It was laughable before. The only other thing to recap on, the MSDS reports or SDS reports, I kind of got educated on that. I think we all did. Pamela did a great job catching us up on that. I went home, asked my wife about it. Many of you know, she's also my business partner and certified vet tech, sterile processing tech, welder. She just smiled at me and laughed and pulled out the folder from our autoclave reports and said, here's all your MSDS reports. And Pamela's right. They're now calling them SDS reports, that I need to catch myself up on them and that they should be on site or readily available. We try to keep this quick. I went through them and looked for any products like ink. We talked about that last time. They were ready available online. So I looked up all the ink site that we use and I got all the SDS reports for the inks. And I have those now switched over the surgical scrub we use. Just got them all up to date and caught up, but they should be readily available. We were correct, of course, in that OSHA is the one that regulates that. OSHA is capable of inspecting tattoo shops. They don't. OSHA only regulates, well, that's not true. They rarely do. They only do when there's a complaint or a problem or an issue. They focus on large, high-risk ventures. The other reason they don't often do are tattoo studios is that most of the stuff that's OSHA related is in rule, with the state and being covered by the state and looked at by our inspectors. So anyway, that was just a recap on last week.
Elaine?
Yeah, Elaine Pandolfi here. I was just going to make a suggestion based on what Pamela said. In that anesthetic section, maybe what we need is something that's topical, or over the counter, because we know suppliers also carry a lot of this numbing cream. And then you have what's not allowed. And mainly it's doing, those injectables and the whatever the proper term is for put the mask over it and you should have an anesthesiologist there type thing, because that is becoming a huge, huge thing. And I hear more and more people talk about it. So maybe separating it out that way, in, subsections like that might help with this as well.
Hey, Sean News. I think part of the problem, though, that you were saying was that right now it's a question mark if any of it's even allowed. Like, I think we just opened up a bit of a hornet's nest on this, to where now the state is looking into if any numbing cream or anesthetic or topical or over the counter is being allowed during tattooing. Just because we've been doing it doesn't mean that it's, state board legal, which, I mean, this is just, we're talking about, this committee is to go over the curriculum of teaching, and that question is now outside into the rules and laws type of thing, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is also like what we were talking about last week of like what Michigan did, is essentially they outlawed all of it because they looked into it so much and they found out that it was like, you're essentially practicing medicine. So then they regulated it to the point where even the over-the-counter, you can't use Bactine, you can't use anything. I don't know if we want that. I feel like there's might be a happy medium.
Muller, for purposes of the education, if we do anesthetics and one of the subsections is types, that leaves it open for interpretation and it gives us a lot of room to grow as the state decides what happens with these things. Because we're not legally allowed to use the injectables or the gaseous. I think if we just break it down to different types, legal risk, health risks, and client education, it serves its purpose for this. Right.
And then you sort out the rest of the stuff in rules and
Laws. Correct.
Yeah.
And a lot of that can be taken up with the curriculum that you write.
Yes.
Doesn't have to change.
Go ahead, Pamela.
Yeah, Pamela, I would say go right ahead.
Sorry, I forget to say my name every time. Everything that's been said here, I mean, it all needs to be hashed out. I think our biggest concern is just having, the original question was, what do we want to add to the curriculum? Adding some form of education to this is where this started, just because we know that there are so many different things in use in the industry. Anesthetics doesn't necessarily mean medical, not any more than does Sanoderm or Dermore. Guess what? Those all hinged off of medical second skin bandaging. Same thing with skin scribes. Those surgical markers, they all come from the medical field. We're using all of these things. They weren't invented for tattooing. They came from another scope. But we have the ability to use over the counters. I've got an entire lecture on that with all this. I would be more than happy to throw it out there on the table for you guys to use as part of your curriculum or for writing these rules right here if you'd like to look at them. And they're in a very simple form that the average person can understand. And it's like the wording here, breaking them into groups. I don't, like I said, somebody said opening Pandora's box, and that's a good way to put that. But again, we're talking, I mean, there's people everywhere doing everything. We can't possibly put all of that in our curriculum. We see everything, tattooing eyeballs and, I mean, the whole 9 yards. We all know it's there. But topical anesthetics is safe for use, but it's still, there needs to be education on it. And anybody that's doing the cosmetic side knows our industry hinges on that.
All right, so does anyone have any other comments related to the course of study? No? Okay. So now,
I do. Oh,
Go ahead.
I think instead of legal risks, it needs to be part, it has to be part of your client history, your client intake. You just need to ask the question, are you allergic? Do you have any allergies to any topical anesthetics? Do you have any allergies to lidocaine, prilocaine, whatever's in that they're using? But there needs to be a question on the intake. That's what gives us the go ahead. And then all permanent cosmetics usually have in their waivers the risk. You have to put the risk of any procedure. And client education would just be, when and where we can, not informing the client not to be doing that before they come in.
Yeah, so under 3.7 client protection, there's also added an anesthetic contraindications.
Right.
Would that fit, Pam, what you're saying, or should we put it in a different spot?
I'm kind of wondering, I mean, is one of those things, does it fall into two spots, or should it just be under anesthetics?
Dan Gilsdorf here. I think it's fine to have it in two spots.
Yeah. I mean, because they are really safe as long as people are working within the guidelines. When they start going out here, like I said, injectables is not anywhere near our scope of practice. I don't even know what state, any state, you would have to be completely out of your scope of practice. And if somebody's willing as a doctor to let you do that or be medical oversight for, well, have at it. But that is certainly not anything that we even probably need to touch in this. That's so far out of our scope of practice. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but
the concept of like following the instructions and saying that topical anesthetics are safe, like yes, they are if manufacturer's instructions are followed. But how many people don't follow the manufacturer's instructions on Sanoderm and Second Skin and all of those products?
Exactly. Yes. Same thing with all of what we do. Tattooing can be all of those things. Tattooing could fit in that in numerous ways. And so it's all about education, and that's what this is. We're talking about how are we going to educate people to use these safely and within their scope of practice. So it's not rocket science, I don't feel like, and I don't think it needs to be huge. I don't think we need to open up to those types of things. But a regional anesthetic is a long, long way away from a topical anesthetic. So
This is Cameron Straub again, Pamela. I think the only reason we at least have to mention it in the curriculum is because it's becoming more popular. So seeing what we saw in the last, 5 years or 8 years, however long it's been, it's going to be talked about more in the next 5 or 8, especially since people are using anesthesia now. So it should be a conversation. We know we can't in this state and it's out of our scope of practice, but for an education for the students, they should be learning about it, that educated that it's out of their scope of practice.
And I do. That's how my personal approach has been when I teach on anesthetics is these are the types, these are what they do, this is what they're used for, and I move on strictly into what's in our scope of practice. It's exposure, and then it's education where the education needs to be, and it's discussed. So because I think it's right. I mean, we're seeing everything now, so it's worth touching on. I agree with that.
Right, so if we're ready, we'll move on to the practical side of things. So practical operations, practical procedures. So as of right now, the current minimum number of practical procedures is set at 50. How do we feel about that number?
Tom Muller, I think it should be more.
Okay.
Especially because we know so many of the locations are doing small little tattoos, multiple in a day and on their own students. I just think it's a good way to curb that to a minimum. Plus 50 procedures isn't, in the grand scheme of things, it's not very many.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of number are we thinking?
I would love to up it to 100, but we can discuss that as a group.
Okay.
I would, Sean News, I would vote to triple it, go 150. Because as we discussed last time, there's no requirements for different body parts or for different types of tattoos, right? So if your first 50 are 25 outlines and 25 solid black, the next 50 are color tattoos, and then the last 50 are black and gray wash tattoos on varying body parts. That makes sense to me.
Tom Miller, is that something we can do? Can we break the procedures down so they have to be specific?
It's
to-
tricky with anesthetic.
It gets tricky with the cosmetic, and so that's where it's like, do you separate, if you're doing cosmetic tattoos, you need this many of these procedures, and if you're doing artistic tattoos, you need this many of that procedures? Is that something that we can write into the curriculum that makes sense to everybody else?
If we do that though, then shouldn't we separate out the curriculum itself?
We're trying to avoid that. And so that's why I'm like, if we leave, and we're just talking about practical, and we can break the practical into two categories, if this is what you're studying, then these are the procedures you need for that. And if this is what you're studying, these are the procedures you need for that. They have very similar things in other curriculums for different careers in Oregon. So if it's possible for us, I would love to discuss that.
Yeah, so we would have to essentially make the process the same depending on what that person wants to do. So if someone wants to focus in cosmetic, they would still have to do those 50. But what you can do is break them down and say, okay, total of 100 procedures, 80 are going to be done this, this, and this. 20 procedures can be discretionary. You guys can make whatever you want. Maybe that could be an avenue where someone could focus on the cosmetic side of things. Just a suggestion. Yeah.
Jesse, I agree with that. I also think that if we just look at tattooing the way there's access this way, and then if somebody moves from out of state, they have to have a minimum of 3 years of experience. And there's kind of a big discrepancy between 150 hours and 3 years. And so if we require that level of knowledge and training from anybody moving from out of state, why do we not require that level of training and experience for people who are coming from within the state? That seems like a big discrepancy. So sort of trying to bring the level of hours or at least practical time up to meet that standard seems reasonable, unless we're thinking about rethinking what we require from people who are coming from out of state. Because what we're doing is we're just sort of farming low-skilled people and then keeping people who actually have a bunch of experience from coming to our state. And that doesn't serve our industry at all.
Right.
What we're doing is we're sort of underselling ourselves.
Tripling it would be amazing though, because honestly it would help out any situation. For example, if you get somebody that passes out, somebody that is the first experience in a tattoo shop, they're already nervous. That helps you build the confidence to be a tattooer. Also to be in a position where you're able to solve the next person ahead of you. Like number 40 something, passed out on me, now number 80 tattoo procedure, whatever it is, you know how to handle that situation. And it helps you out a ton as well. So I think even 150, 200 might be up there, but that'd be great because coming from out of Oregon, 3 years of taxes, that was not easy for me because I didn't know how to do that. But coming from in here, all you require is 50 procedures.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I'm well experienced and I'm calling against, that'd be nice to actually be like, hey, this is cool. Yeah, I can respect it.
Aaron, go ahead.
So doubling or tripling the amount of tattoos that we have to teach is absolutely going to kill our program completely. It's going to, we have to consider, sorry, my clock is going off. We have to consider accessibility for people that can't, there are already financial barriers for low-income individuals in the program. And so every additional tattoo is going to be more instructor time, more materials, more supervision, and it's really going to cause us to raise prices. And there's just a lot of accessibility issues when we're already a pretty expensive program. And so, it's equity issues, community strain. Not every student has access to 60 or 100 willing friends or family. we've got people that relocate here who have been tattooing in other states but can't prove it. And so it's a huge can of worms for us. And I think anybody who's been teaching for any period of time would agree that doubling it is absolutely going to be a huge problem for us.
So Aaron, what number would you recommend? Would you keep it at 50 or raise it a little bit?
I mean, I would rather keep it at 50. I'd be willing to go up to 60, but I think what we need to look at more is possibly size requirements, the number of tattoos people are allowed to do per day. Like you guys were saying, maybe a category variety, body parts or whatever. But, but what we're looking more at is slow supervised learning, not volume. So I wouldn't want to increase it at all.
Rebecca?
I was gonna say, sorry, my voice is kind of going out. If we're thinking about this from a monetary value, we're all of a sudden taking everything away from what we're actually trying to do, which is better our industry and make our students be coming out of these programs with more knowledge and be more successful. Because right now, as it sits, these 50 procedures in 150 hours are being hit at the minimum capacity because there's nothing regulating like what's going on there. And so if we're just coming at it from like, oh, I'm going to have to charge more, oh, I'm going to have to do this, oh, my program's going to change, oh, I'm going to have to put in more work, we are not even thinking about it then from a standard perspective, industry perspective. We're just thinking about it from our greedy little pockets. And so my thing with that is we should be thinking about what we're doing, and what we're trying to do is get this program up to a standard that every other apprenticeship has, every other, like someone had mentioned before, every other person coming into the state is being held to. So like, why aren't we looking to do that? And if you're worried about raising your prices or having to put more hours into like help your students get there, that's not what I think that we should be looking at. And I think there needs to be some sort of like tiered thing where you're like your first couple or like, your line work and then your shading and all that. But it needs to be more than 50 procedures because and more than 150 hours of practical experience, in my opinion.
Tama Muller, I've had a school for 8 years. I haven't had a single student get to the testing phase with less than 200 procedures. And again, that's my school and that's the way we run it. I let them get to a certain point and then charge a small base fee to cover their supplies because it is expensive. It's also part of learning how to run your business, how to acquire supplies, make them work, keep track of them. And we haven't had a problem with anybody getting to those procedures in time for their test. It has always, about 200 is what they walk in here with when they get ready to test. And it hasn't enabled us to not be able to run the school in an effective manner at all. So I have a different opinion than that, but I definitely don't think at 50 procedures that they are capable of being on their own, especially if they're going into a studio where they have no oversight, which is super common with students.
Yeah, Jesse Preston, I think it's so complicated. I feel a lot, I'm passionate about this. But I think what's difficult is that I've heard from people throughout the sort of course of this committee discussing the idea that we're just letting people in the door and then the shops that they go work at are responsible for educating them. The problem is that people go to school thinking that they're going to be educated enough to be able to go anywhere to get a job. From a lot of the people that I've talked to that have gone to schools, they've gone through that experience and gotten out and realized that they can't get hired places because they don't have enough time under their belts. And they wish that they had learned more because they felt that they paid for an education and didn't actually get it. And what we have the opportunity to do right now is to create that option for them, that they can go to school and actually learn the things that they need to and leave that experience feeling responsible, educated, and confident about their skill set. And 50 practical hours, it's just, or tattoos, it's just not enough to get them there. And I think that that's something that we should like take into account.
Olivia, out of most of my applicants for hiring in the last few years, the majority of them have said when they show me their portfolio that they only started actually getting it towards the last 5 or 10 procedures. And so their portfolio is full of 40 tattoos that they shouldn't even be showing you as an interviewee. And then about 5 where you're like, okay, I see that you learned something. And so I do, I feel strongly also that the learning curve is so high that with 50 procedures, you're not even really doing anything the same twice. You're not even really like solidifying something that you learned before. And you're only really starting to get it when you're at like 45. So that means that when you go to show someone a portfolio at the end of your schooling, you should have a full portfolio, but instead you get maybe 3 or 4 where you're like, I'm trying to see between the lines if you're competent in this or not.
You're having to look at potential, Kat Pipkin, over education, essentially. I think at bare minimum, it needs to be doubled. Bare minimum.
Cameron?
Yeah, sorry, I'll try to keep this quick. I've been making notes. I do agree with Aaron, though, with that point about crippling schools. It shouldn't be monetary, but if you look at a school charging $15,000 a student, and you do the math at 360 hours, it's about $42 an hour. If you're going to keep a student on, I mean, what are we going to do? Charge them 30 grand to go through tattoo school? That is a barrier. It is a barrier. We also have schools, like we said, we need to control the quality of the tattoos they're doing and the size. Schools that are pushing people out are doing these little things on the weekends and having them do tiny tattoos and shoving them out the door. We need to control that. If schools are willing to take on students that have 0 art skills coming in the door, 50 procedures isn't going to be enough, but neither is 150 if they have no art skill. So we kind of can't control that. What we can control is the size and quality of the tattoos that they're doing. The 3-year point of tattoos from out of state needing 3 years of practice or experience, Oregon is a pretty strict state. And what we tried to avoid was students going to other states, like say Washington, wherever, Arizona, wherever, getting a license quickly and then coming back to Oregon and jumping into the system. 3 years kind of made them stay and get that experience that hopefully we're teaching them. So I think we need to control the size and complexity more than we need to up the number of tattoos. And then I have a question for some of you that do cosmetic tattoos that I don't know about. And maybe just quickly, Pamela, Aaron, I don't know who else here does that. What is an adequate number of cosmetic tattoos for someone? I mean, some of us are thinking we'd like to keep it around 50 or go up a little bit, but do cosmetic tattoos need a bunch more procedures than artistic tattoos, or the same amount? Is it relative?
Can I just comment real quick that Cameron, Sean, so you're saying because you were saying like the, quote, like puppy mill schools, right? Just pumping out people and trying to slow the brakes on that. I think upping the number of procedures is a very good controllable metric, because like the complication of a tattoo or size, yeah, I guess we could put out, sheets where it's like, oh, it has to fit in the 4-inch circle, right, to be considered, quote, a tattoo. But if we have the paperwork trail of 150 procedures, like that is something that we can measure, something we can check on, something that there is a literal paper trail of that will slow down, not necessarily your schools, because you guys are already doing above and beyond, but the ones that are just churning out people.
Joseph?
Hi. So, having been somebody that did get licensed out of state before moving here, as well as my partner who primarily tattoos, she came in with the equivalent of 150 recent tattoos with consent forms and portfolio stuff for verification. That was still even questioned as far as whether or not that was enough to consider reciprocity the previous 3 years. So, being at 52, like having that we've been seeing, especially in the last week, I've been paying a little more attention to it. We keep getting emails from people that, like was said earlier, there's only about 4 or 5, maybe 10 tattoos at most that are really solid. I think the 50 procedures is incredibly low, but I don't think it necessarily needs to go as far as being tripled, because that does not necessarily cost prohibitive, but time as well. So like that was kind of my insight, that I don't necessarily think it needs to be like significantly raised, but at least something. So sorry, thank you.
Pam?
I think it comes back to, I agree with everything that Erin said and Rebecca. I mean, we have to have some balance here. But again, this program was designed as what we call a fundamental program. Just like cosmetology, barber, anything else, we model after those programs. And nobody, I just don't think it's unrealistic. I think it's unrealistic for us to think that a student is going to come out with the equivalent of 3 to 5 years training. Every single industry has an entry-level program, and then they continue to learn within the industry. And I think that's where people mix up. There's those of us that don't care, and there's those of us that put our heart and soul into it. There's going to be both sides in our industry. And it's our job in the industry to continue to mentor these people. We'd have them in school forever if we thought they were going to come out to the competency level that I feel like some people are expecting. So I don't know that I don't think that 150 procedures is even, I totally agree with Erin. Nobody would be able to get into, I feel like that's putting a hurdle there that nobody's going to even be able to come into this industry. I think it's the quality of the teaching while we have them. And if we can do, I like the idea, that's kind of what we do, is your first 10 have to be this size, at least size. I think we could word it differently, where they need to incorporate the gray wash, incorporate full color. These need to be, they need to have a good salt and pepper in here. I don't know how we would put that in there, but I don't think it's so much that we need this enormous volume. I just think we need better quality of teaching. Because again, we are not art schools. But again, we can't discriminate either. We can't say who comes into this industry and who doesn't. Legally, I think we could get into some ramifications there. I mean, we could have some trouble. We'd have legal ramifications if we get too sideways on trying to keep people out, which is what the old school apprenticeships have done. So I think it comes back to the quality of our teaching, and maybe just rewording some of this to make sure that people are getting, because I agree, they really don't start to get it until we get up there closer to 50. But if they're starting to get it and you see growth in their portfolio, that's what I'm looking at. Do I see positive growth in their portfolio?
But our hour requirement and our procedure requirement hasn't changed in 20 years.
This is Tricia. I just wanted to throw this information out there for a little bit of perspective. Barbering requires 465 practical operations. Aesthetics is 220 practical operations. Hair design is 455 practical operations, and nail technology is 70 practical operations. So 50 is below any other field of practice offered.
And none of those are permanent.
Or regular
skin.
Right, exactly. Just throwing that out.
Yeah, Jesse Preston. This isn't a measuring of whether or not schools are teaching properly. This is a measurement of how much time somebody is investing into their own career. And if your school is already doing it, then it shouldn't impact you at all. The problem is that schools aren't doing it. And I won't hire anybody from tattoo school. They come in and they don't know anything. They don't know how to operate a thermofax half the time. I can't hire them. So we've created a situation where, like, I guess what I keep hearing is sort of, we shouldn't expect people to pay more or do more to get into this industry. And I think having the bar that low, if somebody's looking for a new career and they say, should I get into barbering or doing hair or doing nails? And they look and they see they only have to do a fraction of what those other programs do, they're gonna choose tattooing. doesn't mean that they necessarily have a love for it or anything like that, but it's like the bar is so low that it seems easily attainable, and they presume that they'll be able to get out and actually have a great career. And that's just not the reality. And so by upping this, I feel like it gives people like who are getting into it more respect for the trade that they're getting into. And it should be a measurement of whether or not they're willing to like put themselves out there and invest the time that it takes to actually be good at this, rather than just being able to attain a license quickly.
Olivia, to piggyback off of what Jesse was saying, like, I want to remind everybody that we're trying to achieve basic competency, the lowest bar for the people who are not doing more. And right now, if we leave that, so it says 50 completed procedures must be on a living being, including touch-ups or additional work. The places that are churning out students are already not abiding by that. So if we leave the procedures at 50 and change the language, that will not do anything. That will not do anything to ensure that these schools that are churning people out are doing anything different. And so I feel like we should, like, as a whole, remember that this is to up the baseline, keep the bar a little bit higher so that it is not as easy to just churn people out, because again, like, changing the wording under the 50 complete procedures, as we've realized, won't do anything because there's no regulation from HEC. So until we get that regulation from HEC, I feel like upping the number of procedures is the only way to ensure that more is actually done in these places that aren't doing anything.
Sean News. Another thing, like you guys pointed out, that finding 100, 150 friends and family, right, to come in and get these beginning tattoos would be difficult. I do agree. I don't know if I don't have 100 friends. I have like 4, 5, 6 of them are here in this room right now. And that's about it. But shouldn't that also be part of the curriculum in teaching these students how to go and get clientele, how to go and find people to get tattooed? Because isn't that, if they're only doing 50 tattoos on the 12 people that they know, when they get out of school, the expectation that they're gonna go make more friends to tattoo, that doesn't work. That's not a business model, you know? So then they go to various shops and they're like, I don't have any clientele and I don't know how to get clientele, because they weren't taught, because they didn't have to go and do that. Like, I had a traditional apprenticeship, and we all know there's faults with that. I'm not arguing that one, but I did have to go and, like, you got to round up people to get tattooed. Like, you have to find clientele. You have to go and do these things to be able to do the whole thing. And I feel like that's an important part of it.
Yep, absolutely.
Jesse Preston, I'm looking up just for hair school in Oregon is between $10,000 and $20,000 per student, and their practical hours fall between 1,000 and 2,000 hours. So the price comparison versus the like practical experience hours is even less for tattoos than for hair. So if we're looking, that's roughly the same price, I think, as schools. It depends, 7,000 to 15,000 is what I've like heard here. And they still have 1,000 hours. So
it's not one-to-one.
Comparable in terms of like what's involved in teaching people, wouldn't you say?
It's not one-to-one. It's not one-to-one. Sorry, this is Cameron Straub. That's not a one-to-one student to instructor ratio. You can have a classroom full of students.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Muller here. Part of it, you guys are saying also, you know, that it's a financial strain on the students. Just like with hair school, barber school, and esthetician school, they get to a certain point where they get to start charging a fee, which offsets the cost of schooling and being in school. Again, you're not just trying to be a tattooer, you are trying to run a whole business, and the business becomes you. So giving the students an opportunity to continue to do procedures where they have an instructor and they're able to earn a little bit of money and the school's a little bit able to earn a little bit of money, you're offsetting both things. I don't see like not upping the procedures because we're worried that some of the schools are gonna shut down. That's a business problem for the school, not, and it's hypothetical, and it's not what we're talking about. We are trying to set a base minimum for tattooing in Oregon that is better than it has been for the last 30 years. Because again, we keep this bar so low, like Jesse stated, people are looking for careers, they're gonna find the one with the lowest, easiest entry, and that's why we have this system where we're not really, the base minimum isn't enough to get them a job or be hireable, which at least out of hair school, they are.
So Erin Smith here. So the reason why, you know, it's actually easier to get into barbering school because they allow for financial aid. We're not eligible for financial aid. And so it's a lot easier for people to get into those programs. And tattooing and barbering, you're comparing apples to oranges. You know, those procedures aren't permanent. They're not, obviously, it's a lot easier to get somebody in for a haircut. It's a lot easier to get somebody in for a haircut or an aesthetics procedure that isn't a permanent risk versus getting somebody in. And also those cosmetology schools, they've got people lined up to come in, little old ladies getting perms and haircuts all the time. Whereas our tattoo schools, we're operating it out of our shop, and I'm not advertising, hey, we've got cheap student tattoos here. And also, I think our biggest issue that everybody is talking about is enforcement. You know, I personally had issues with the local tattoo mill here too, and I've made 2 complaints last year and this year about my issues with students doing flash sales and the public not being informed that they're even being tattooed by a student. And, you know, the enforcement is what is lacking. It's not it's not our quality of instruction. What we need to be focusing on is quality, not quantity.
Tom and Muller, I have a question. Why are we not eligible for financial aid? We are a secondary education institution, just like every other one.
Students, do you receive financial aid?
It's my understanding FAFSA has a minimum. HECC told me this. Now I could be wrong, someone, but I was told that because FAFSA's minimum requirement was 600 hours, and we don't meet that. But my question is, if we were to up our hours so that we met the FAFSA, now we're going to have all these students that can jump in just like they do to beauty and barber, like Erin said, and now we have opened up a huge.
Why is that a can of worms?
Sounds like a can of worms that you guys making a lot more money.
Not necessarily, because again, you're talking 50 completed procedures versus 100 completed procedures. Do any of the schools change anything? Nope. Now we have 100 bad tattoos instead of 50. We need again, the languaging. That's where I think the languaging would help. Is it going to make every school do it right? Maybe not. I think that's unrealistic as well. But I agree with Erin. The problem here is not so much what we have written now, even though you're right, we should probably revisit it and change it some. But I don't think that just doubling it for the sake of doubling it is going to change the quality of how said schools are operating. We need some kind of audit. We need some kind of oversight. We need some way to regulate schools. At least somebody needs to be checking in on, are they even doing it? I mean, I'm amazed. I'm sure all of you heard some crazy stuff from people coming out of school. And I'm shocked at some of the things I hear. And I'm like, but nobody's enforcing what we already have. So I don't understand how upping it is going to help if we don't change the quality of what's being taught and how much time we're spending with our students.
I just want to say we're not doubling it or tripling it or adding hours just to add hours. Like the things that we've talked about are to get more experience and get more specific experience, right? So like the reasoning behind it isn't, we're not just, throwing numbers at the wall to see what sticks. We're saying, if it's only 50, like there's no regulation on what those 50 are, or, yes, like Cameron said, like size requirements on those 50, right? Or specific body parts or specific things. So if we can get more specific with what we are looking for, right? Then again, there will be a paper trail that you can follow. I did 10 tattoos on arms or 10 eyebrows or 10 lips or whatever, right? If there's specific requirements along the way, that does equal more procedures, but that also equals a more well-rounded student that has more experience, because this whole thing is experience. We can do the 250, 210 hours of teaching until you're blue in the face. Specifically me, I'm terrible in a classroom setting. I have to learn by doing, right? And if I only got 50 tattoos before I was out the door, then I would still be working at the mall. I would not have made it, 18 years of this.
Rebecca?
Hi, this is Rebecca Flum. I just want to say I feel like we've got some circular logic happening here where it's like, well, we can't raise the hours because students won't be able to afford it, but we can't, and because FAFSA like doesn't consider it, doesn't consider us worth funding because, sorry, I'm kind of babbling here. We're saying that if we increase our hours to get FAFSA funding, then all of a sudden we'll have too many students jumping in versus like, well, we need to make it accessible, and so that's why we're keeping the hours low. Like, I just feel like it's circular, and what we need to do is take a look at FAFSA saying like, okay, you need to have 600 hours to be, worth to qualify for financial aid. That should say something to us right there that we are not at a level of being considered a serious institution if we're not even teaching our students that many hours. Like, if they don't even consider us worth funding, then maybe we should take that as a sign that we should have the kind of hours that would include us with these other institutions, these other educational industries, so that we actually are respected as an industry and not just like something people go into because it's not very many hours to train.
Matt?
Something to consider, and I'm not trying to add to the pile, but something to consider is the hours. Right now, 150 divided by 50 is 3 minutes per tattoo. So maybe some of this burden could be put more on the hours and how many procedures there are. Because it says there's only 150 hours required for tattooing. Is that right?
When we looked at
3 hours.
3 hours.
Yeah. So wouldn't we want more hours? Wouldn't we also want more hours? And that might help take the burden off actually how many are being done. That way there's actually, you can't do the burn and churn puppy mill school type thing we're doing. Am I off base? I don't know.
But would it be easier if we just started listing potential categories that people should be tattooing and then we can consider numbers after that, or?
Yeah.
Idea. I think getting more specific with things is.
The other thing I wanted to say really quick though too is the good thing about having more procedures is that's more chances for people to set up, and that's more protection for clients outside of these rooms.
Yes.
So, 50 procedures, your circle of awareness, maybe you're still looking and making sure things are washed and wiped down, and maybe you're trying to think of what the client's talking to you about and everything else. So that was the other, those are just considerations I'm throwing out there. I'm sorry I don't have a solution.
Question, is it, and maybe we've covered this, but is it possible for, oh, sorry, Jesse. Is it possible to split these into 2 categories? So one is aesthetics and one is tattooing, or they have to be the same across the board?
Well, anyone holding a tattoo license or pursuing a tattoo license would have to complete these procedures, regardless of what their end goal was.
So if we adjust the hours and we're specific, say, about having to do black and gray tattooing, can we do a parallel one that's like, say
Where
it's
the
black
hours are
and,
the same.
yeah, the hours are the same, but it's like specifying a different kind of procedure for aesthetics?
I have to look into that.
I don't think we can. The Tom Muller, from the reading I've done, I don't think we can unless we literally separate the programs into 2 separate things, which is laws and rules, and it's a lot more meetings and a lot more minutia to to fully separate them into 2 courses of study.
There are 2 courses, everyone has to learn both courses.
No, it would be more like you would separate it, so there would be a license for cosmetic tattooing and there would be a license for artistic tattooing, but then you would have to go through and set up the full school curriculum requirements for cosmetic and
But
versus-
having 2 different
That's an
licenses
area.
requires legislation.
Right.
Yeah, you have to go all the way to
I
the state.
think that's an area where this, like, no matter what we do, I think that's gonna be kind of a complex area.
Yeah, because we can't specify further, sorry, Olivia, we can't specify further without then requiring cosmetic students to be doing outlines and shading and stuff on artistic tattoos and vice versa.
Right.
Pickle.
It is a pickle.
Yeah.
Are there any shared procedures that both types of individuals could do?
No.
No, the fact that
Everything
it's the
else,
same
like,
licenses.
right.
Yeah, it shouldn't even be the
Tom,
same.
like most
Line
students.
work is used kind of in.
I mean,
Or doing.
Not necessarily. The way that cosmetic tattooers are doing lines is like a very scratchy, soft thing, and the way that we're doing is a very committed pull down. It's substantially the biggest thing, and it's one of the biggest problems I see when cosmetic tattooers try to jump over and do little tiny tats, is they're trying to do these little like scratchy lines that they've been learned, which is appropriate for the face. And we generally don't let new tattooers anywhere near a face because it's so dramatically different in skin and texture and tone and age. And so they are very, just because they're called the same thing, it's really a very different practice when it comes down to it.
Cat Pipkin, in all honesty, it should be 2 licenses.
Right, but that's not something we
But that's
can,
not our choice today.
that's not our choice today or something we can manage. So how do we fix the procedures?
Olivia, I feel like the only, and again, this is just my opinion, because getting more specific was going to kind of put tattooing and cosmetic tattooing at this weird pickle. In my opinion, it feels like upping the amount of procedures is the only way to be able to gain more practical experience. Because again, like, even if we separate things and make it more specific, the schools that are not going above and beyond will not be looking at that fine print. They're only gonna be looking at the number of procedures and the number of hours and adhering to that basic bottom. So unless we wanna like make every tattoo student learn eyeliner, lips, and every cosmetic tattoo student to learn line work and shading, which I don't think any of us want, it seems like upping the hours is the only way to get a little bit more experience, in my opinion.
I agree, Jesse Preston. I also think there is sort of an argument made a little bit ago that was like, they're either getting 50 bad tattoos or 100 bad tattoos. We can't control the schools. That's not what this board is about. That's not the end goal for what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is create an environment where people are prepared and know their craft better. And the only way to do that in tattooing is through practice and having more time. And so whether people choose to follow these laws down the line are sort of irrelevant. The primary focus I think that we should all be thinking about is, can this person finish school and feel confident in their skill set? And I don't think 50 hours or 50 completed procedures does that. Adjusting it somehow, I think, needs to like be done today.
Cameron?
I think we're getting close to the question. I'm not opposed to raising it. I just think to what. And I want to reiterate the concerns that we had with body piercing that we predicted and saw, where we raised them too high and we overregulate. And in that case, nobody was ever going to create a school. And since then, nobody has created a school. In this case, it's like the gun argument again. I mean, leave it to me. But we're going to regulate all the law abiding and only the criminals are going to have guns. All the good schools are going to stop teaching. And what we're going to be left with are the puppy mill schools. And they're still not going to be doing an adequate job because they're still not going to be getting regulated. But we're going to lose all the good schools. Anyways, sorry, and I'll hand it over. So raise it. I'm okay with raising it, but what should we raise it to? And this whole thing, I know this board isn't for it, but why couldn't, when a student goes into one of these schools, pick cause or artistic and do the same amount of hours, but then in their field, and they're not licensed to do one or the other? Again, not what we're addressing here, but Just a thought.
Good idea.
Did you have something, Tom? I was just gonna say, as the schools, we're taking on the obligations of the students, and so I feel it's important to give them enough time. I know that some of the schools, once you get to 50 procedures, you're done, that's it, you don't get any more. So I definitely feel like raising it is going to give these students more area, again, to be under supervision with them.
And then camp.
Right. Kat Pipkin, I personally came in here hoping that we were gonna walk out of here with 750 hours. Not gonna lie. I wanted like 400 and 350, so theory, practical, but that's neither here nor there. I think taking the hours up for procedures while also consistently taking up the procedure number, because there's a language that the skin speaks that until you hit that point, stuff's not clicking. And like Olivia said, like there's a point where you're getting like 3 to 5 tattoos at the end of the program where you can see where that clicked. And that language is different per body part, but like without separating, I don't even know how to combat this from cosmetic to body art. I don't have a solution.
Erin?
Would there be a possibility where we could put in the rules that you have to do, 10 arm tattoos, 10 leg tattoos, something like that? And then, or if you're in a primarily cosmetic program, you're doing 10 lips, 10 eyebrows, 10 eyeliners, something like that, so that you're choosing from a list on this side or a list on this side?
A specified field of study.
Yeah, it's possible. I have to verify it with our policy analyst, but if that's something that we want to think about developing now, we can, and then I'll bring it to them for.
Okay, and then another just quick point about qualifying for financial aid and raising the hours up a ton is I just want to express the concern that if we think our industry is oversaturated right now, if we started taking financial aid for tattoo schools, some of these programs will be pumping out 1,000 students a year.
But they can't by law.
Hours.
But they could if they had enough instructors and enough, and enough money to do it.
Kat Pipkin, I think the 1-to-1 student to instructor ratio really helps to alleviate that. But it's only for the first, Tom Muller, it's only for the first 10 procedures. That's true. Right now, we currently have only direct observation for the first 10. And then all the procedures after that, the instructor has to be available. Right. Which basically means in the building. Yep.
And then, Shalini, a question then. By that logic, the minimum, then you could have 5 people. There's 1 that you teach 1-to-1 and 4 that you are available for, right? Correct. But that's on 1 day.
Yes.
There's 7 days a week. So you could have 35, that's math, right? So you could have 35 students at one time that you are teaching per week for X amount of time and then just rotating through constantly, right?
Correct.
Do we need to set a maximum of teacher to student ratio of like, this is your group, you can have 10 students in your group and that's it?
We already have 4-to-1 after the 10.
No, but that's what I'm saying, that's at a time. That's at one point during the day. So that's noon to 2, I'm in the building for these 4 people. Now you all get out, my next 4 are coming in, I'm teaching them 2 to 4 p.m. Okay, you 4 get out, or alternating days or things like that. Or is that too much of the state telling you guys how to run your business?
Exactly. Yep, it is. One of the things too, I wanted to bring up, this is Pam again, neighbors. We have on the cosmetic side, and I know it's just really weird. I mean, there's people that only want to do gray wash. They don't want to do color. On the art side, we see that all the time. But on the cosmetic side, you have scalp. Scalp is a huge animal. They're coming to school. They are getting a license because that's required to do scalp. I would have guys that are doing amazing scalp work. I would never let them touch a face. And then you have microbladers. They're not doing eyeliner and they're not doing lips. they're wanting to only do brows. So when we start, if we try to categorize the 50 or 75 or 100 or whatever we have, that becomes a big problem there because our industry is specializing so much that are we going to be able to tell a student that, nope, you got to take the whole thing or else?
Tom Muller, I think if you're getting licensed and your license covers all of this and we're trying to set a base minimum, the answer to that question is yes. They should have to do some basic primer in each one before they're just introduced into the world. Again, you're not trying to teach. Everybody keeps saying we're not trying to have a fully competent tattooer on the other side. We're just trying to make sure that there's base competency. And if you're not even remotely covering that, if it's not their field of study, how does that level out at the end of the day?
But he said for body art and eyeliner. Does every body artist need to learn to do an eyeliner?
Olivia, in hair school, nail school, you have to do all the perms, you have to do all the pedicures, even if that's not your area of focus, you still have a certain amount of hours that you have to check off that having done it. So
Great.
I don't see why that is that much different.
I mean, yeah, Jesse, Preston, it gets complicated, right? Because like, if people down the line, what we're sort of all acknowledging is that somebody's gonna go from doing microblading and they are gonna get into tattooing, maybe they should have to do it, you know, whether they want to up front or not, right? Like, I learned doing all soft black and gray, you know, tattooing, and now I do traditional. But like, it doesn't matter where you start, you can employ all of those skills. I get though that it's complex. I'm not advocating for any specific thing, but having them split makes more sense. But if you are getting into aesthetics, I feel like you should know how to at least understand or have at least tried to do these ones before, yeah.
Rebecca?
I agree with that. I think that it's like choosing a concentration or something. Like you can choose a concentration, but you should still like learn like kind of what everything that could be offered, because if you decide to like expand later and then you only went to learn microblading, then you're like, oh well, I could have learned all these other things. But I think it's important to like kind of do what we were thinking about with tattooing, is like you have to do so many of these procedures, and then when you leave you could go specialize in whatever you want. But that's about that. And then I did have something to say about the first 10 procedures being directly supervised, and I think it needs to be more than that as well. That's all I have.
Joseph?
What Rebecca just said about the first 10 being supervised one-on-one, that is, for lack of a better word, obnoxiously low. Even if people want to have shifts as a teacher and run multiple classes, like the being one-on-one for 10 procedures, I think would be the first place to start on upping the number. And then also hearing too that like if we need to regulate the tattoos based on size and placement, there's no way to do that between cosmetic and like artistic tattooing. So there's no way to really make that standard without splitting into licensing. So if we're not going to be having that conversation and making the moves to make these separate licenses, I think there's something that needs to be applied. And while I came into this at the start of the meeting thinking that maybe going up to 75 or so tattoos and making those 25 one-on-one, like that's kind of the opinion I had at the beginning. But the more I hear, the more I realize like yes, it would give people an opportunity to have the puppy mill type of shops if we up the standard to allow for financial aid. But the other side of it too is it's only like it's one of the shortest courses that anybody can take in Oregon to get into a job that has the prestige of being able to make money and have that quickly. So it would also, on the other side of that, kind of limit the people that are looking for the way to make a quick buck by also saying that this course can no longer be done in 200 hours or so plus 50 tattoos. If it were to be 200 hours of education plus 200 tattoos, like it would cut out the people looking for the quick way to get into this. And then that would also limit the people too that are trying to just become the puppy mill instructors. Like if they have to keep people there one-on-one for like the first 50 tattoos and then they have to go to another 50 that's supervised, like it's gonna limit the ability for people to actually do that as well, like the desire. So I'm kind of that too, that we need to split the licensing, but if we can't, there's really no way to regulate telling somebody that, hey, you're going to be a permanent makeup artist, but you need to do a 4x4 tattoo on somebody's shoulder. Like that doesn't really work. So the only universal thing we have is regulating or like making the rules for how many tattoos the person has to do versus the instructor's like one-on-one stance. So I think at this point, like the number needs to go up, as well as also figuring out how to get heck to do some kind of enforcement. Like it seems like there's a multi-fronted problem here that like most people are just wanting to let it exist as it is, just so they don't have to change anything or work harder or work longer to get the same end goal. So I do think it needs to go up, but yeah, the one-on-one being only 10 tattoos is like, that's probably the first place we need to address it. So, yeah, thank you.
I have a suggestion, just to throw some numbers out there. The first 25 procedures are 1-to-1, 25 through 50 are 2-to-1, meaning 2 instructors available to the student. And then we can talk about what happens after that. Put some numbers out there to start talking about. That would limit the amount of students that an instructor can have actively working at a time, which would mean there would be more oversight.
How does everybody else feel about that?
I like it.
Yeah, I think 25 more and having more one-on-one, because I know the way we operate, especially on the cosmetic side, we're way more on the one-to-one. We're one-to-one for almost the whole time. And when we do kick over, we're 2-to-1. And so we hardly ever are at a point where we're doing the 4-to-1 that it allows after the first 10. And we're running ourselves ragged, trying to spend time with students. So I like upping the initial 10 to more, to at least 25. And then maybe the next, I like that idea of 25 to 50. And then maybe we add 25 more. 25 more at 3 hours a piece means another 75 hours added to the total numbers of practical experience. If we kind of keep that 3 hour, I don't think that's too many.
Basically, the first 25 would be 1-to-1, second 25 would be 2-to-1, and then after that, we can switch to the 4-to-1.
Yeah.
I do think we need to up the procedures by at least 50 more.
Yeah, is it
100
possible
should
to
be the
vote
minimum.
on like, what's the best way to like kind of make that decision? Like, should we take a vote?
Yeah, we can do like an unofficial, just kind of get everyone's feel for it. Board is, the committee doesn't really have authority to make official votes, but we can just kind of go around.
Bring my ballot box.
I do think, like I agree with Pam and Tom on this, that, like having less, as a teacher, having less people under your watch at a time will then lead to a better education standard. So I think if we got rid of the 4-to-1 altogether and you max out at 2-to-1, that, I have 3 kids. You can't watch all of them at the same time. Like,
Yes, and your kids aren't doing permanent stuff.
just damage to themselves. So I think if you went to a 2-to-1 model at a point, and that's where it caps out, that would be a good idea.
Okay, so right now I've got 1-to-1 student to teacher ratio for the first 25, and then a 2-to-1 ratio for the remaining, or do you want to?
75?
Okay.
Yeah, even if after 75, it's less of a student to teacher ratio. But I think capping it through the first couple of procedures, you know what I mean?
So 25 to 1-to-1, 25 2-to-1, and then 50 4-to-1. That equals 100. Yes. Is that what you're thinking? Yes. Did that?
Yes, that sounds great.
And that's, Shalini, that's not saying, like you pointed out before, like you guys that are running a school as your business, somewhere in your curriculum, why not, you have that first 25 that's 1-to-1, then you got the 25 that's 2-to-1, and then the last 50 that's 4-to-1. have them start charging something for those last 50. They've already made it through 50, which was the old standard if they can go out into the world and charge money for things. You know, now they charge $100 for a tattoo and you split it 50-50, you know, so you're getting some money from the tattoo. Because I mean, I don't presume to know how you guys run your business. You guys, you know, student tattoos, if you charge anything for those. But, you know, then you're making some money from it, then they're also making some money from it. And then that creates incentive to go out and find more clients, you know, which then we're now cultivating people coming in the door. But that's more of a business thing. That's not helpful.
This is Cameron. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. As far as I know, that's not legal for them to make money off it. We can charge a little something for the studio to recoup losses, but the student's not legally allowed to make any money. Am I correct, Pamela?
Why?
Is that's in the law somewhere?
Like, I never read that in the law.
I haven't either.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've heard the opposite from people that came from tattoo schools.
Clearly. Every tattoo school I know, after a certain point, they let the students start charging. That's part of the reason some of the more middle schools take so many in is because they're charging for those tattoos almost right out of the gate. Sometimes after like the 10th tattoo, they have them start charging. It's just a really low rate. It's like $40 or $50 that they're having the students charge. We don't let our students start charging till about 50, and it's really low. It's like $40 per procedure, and it's basically to cover supplies.
This is Cameron. That's going to the school. Pamela's looking it up now with HEC, but we're legally, as far as I know, we'll find it. But HEC or the state, somebody doesn't allow for them to be making money until they're licensed. The school can make a little bit, but they can't. To the numbers, I'm okay with those numbers too that we just talked about because I'm only taking one, sometimes 2 students a year. I really like running it like an apprenticeship that has curriculum, like the best of both worlds. That's the way I do it. Again, the fear is just going to be that the schools that are puppy mill schools they're going to be doing whatever they want anyway. But as long as we know that, well, I'm okay with it. Some of you that have more students a year, we'll see what Aaron says. This is going to hurt more. I don't know.
Olivia, I don't understand how we can get to baseline competence. If that's true, where students aren't allowed to charge, once we figure this out, how can you get to baseline competency with things like business, taxes, learning how to do your books and all of these things if the only time you've handled money from a client is when you're licensed and you have no supervision? Right. To me, that doesn't track as part of a curriculum that can be taught, because if that were true, if you can't accept money for your license.
Dan Gilsdorf, my answer to that would fall under the theoretical versus practical. You can address all that stuff in a theoretical way. Let the practical part handle itself once they're licensed, I suppose.
Agreed.
Argument there. And it makes sense in that sense because with the financial stuff, the stakes are considerably lower than they are. Breaking the Scarrow in the skin. Do we think, one of the things that I had thought about in terms of raising the hours was, it seems to me like the biggest impact on tattoo schools with raising the hours would occur in the schools that are pumping out the most students. And do we think it's possible that raising the hours and the practical requirements would disincentivize what we're calling puppy mill tattoo schools to begin with, and we might see less of those if the standard for operating a school at all was raised?
That's sort of the point.
Yeah, that seems like a positive to me.
This is Erin. I would say that the opposite might be true, that they'd be able to slave these guys out for even longer and profit themselves off of those student tattoos that they're selling on those big flash days.
Matt?
I don't know anyone in this room, and it's super nerve-wracking. I'm in 3 hours. I was wondering why everyone was laughing at me earlier when I said 3 minutes a tattoo. So I just want to apologize. My nerves are kind of up right now because I don't know anyone in this room, so it's a little awkward. My apologies.
Oh, you're scribbling.
We're all artists. We all make math mistakes.
Yeah.
Aaron?
I'm sorry, I forgot that my hand was up. I would just say that I am comfortable with the 75 limit and the 1-to-1 and 2-to-1. I think we're on the right track for that.
Okay, so it has to do with the labor laws in our state. And I have not found it because I know it's in the HECC section of stuff. It's not in it's somewhere buried in the laws and rules. I can't find it right now, but I was told from the very beginning, you cannot charge for student services. And it needs to be posted there at the front desk. It needs to be posted that students are doing the work. The labor standards, the way they word it is that if a student or an apprentice perform productive work that benefits a business, then they have to be paid at least minimum wage. That's why we as schools cannot charge for those. What we do is we charge a supply fee. Same with cosmetology, same with barber, they charge a supply fee. They make it look a little different on the front end, but because of the labor laws is why we can't charge for students. And I agree with Aaron, if that happens, oh my gosh, they'd be abusing people left and right. That's why we have laws and rules protecting and having very strict languaging on apprenticeships in most states. So I'm with Aaron. I like the idea of 75. I like the idea of upping the first few, and I like a little bit. I like a tighter ratio, but I think once they hit that senior status, I don't think 4-to-1 is a bad deal. I don't find it, but that's if they're at senior status and if they have that competency. But I think again, that's going to be: are the schools going to do it?
Muller, what we had suggested was 25 1-to-1, 25 2-to-1, and then an additional 50 at 4-to-1, which
that's,
would
that's 100 procedures.
Correct.
Yeah.
But
so how many hours?
How many hours?
That's a lot.
300.
It's another. So it's how many more hours is it going to be then total?
It doubles the practical hours. So it would be 555 hours for the total program.
Still doesn't qualify.
550.
Still doesn't qualify for FAFSA.
We're only 50 away then.
I've been trying to find the Shaw News. I've been scouring the internet trying to find the FAFSA info. Surprisingly, it's very difficult. It mainly just says that you have to be an accredited school. So the school has to go through the accreditation process to be able to meet whatever. There's several accreditation companies or organizations. To get one of those, you have to meet their requirements to be accredited to then accept federal student aid. And that's all I've seen. I do know you can use, what is it, a 528 type of thing, where
The
you
savings plan?
Yeah,
the 529 plan.
529 plan. You know, parents, I have them for my kids. You can put money away tax-free for your kids. You can actually use that for tattoo school. I had a client and I was tattooing her, and she was saying that her 18-year-old son was going to tattoo school with his college money that she's been saving for you know, years and years, because that was an accepted thing.
It depends on the bank, from what I understand.
Cameron?
So if we, again, it's not all about money, but just something to think about. If it was 550 hours and you're charging 15,000 a student, that puts you at about $27 an hour that you're getting paid training that student. For me, it's a little bit easier because again, it's my wife and I now at a private studio, you know, but when we had instructors, independent contractors that worked at the shop, how do you recoup or generate money and pay them a wage for doing this at $27 an hour? So if you think about it that way, again, back to the concern that some of the most reputable, the best schools are going to say it's not worth it, it doesn't pencil out, and you're going to leave the puppy mills. You're enabling the puppy mills and crippling the better schools potentially. It could up it to 20 grand. I don't know, but how many students have 20 grand to pay for tattoo school? It's just something to think about.
Sean News, Cameron, to go back to that. So if you're looking at like the dollars per hour, like you're saying, if you're already doing the 210 or now 200, what do we have it like 45, 50 schooling hours, right? And that's already built into your curriculum. And then you're already doing the 50 procedures, and, you know, again, you're allowed, like Pamela said, you're allowed to charge a supply fee for those to offset that. You're already doing that.
It would also go up with.
Change your hourly to double it. It's not going to go down. It would stay the same if you're charging the same for 50 as you are for the next 50. Like monetarily, all that's involved is it just takes a little bit longer. You know what I'm saying? Like it's still the same effective out of pocket that you're doing before.
No, it takes the same amount of time, and you're recouping the same amount of loss for those procedures. For some schools, they're going to be making more than that, of course, because they're going to have more students. But if it's per hour, the amount of money you're making for tuition by the amount of time you're spending training that student, you're losing money.
Oh, okay. I wasn't thinking about tuition wise. I was thinking like per procedure. I'm like, if you charge a $40 fee per procedure.
That procedure money, if you're a clean, it's kind of like these specials. If you're a clean tattooer, it costs quite a bit to do a procedure. You know, these Friday the 13th specials where they're doing them for a discounted rate. If you go to a reputable shop and do the math, it's hard to set up for that amount of money. It's not like a school is making a bunch of money on them for doing the procedures. And it would better behoove me to be tattooing than to be training students. I think the reason we do this is back to the love of giving back, the love of teaching and wanting to give back to the students. That's where that comes in. But at some point you're going to say it's just not financially viable, and you're going to leave it to the puppy mill schools to push the students through. It's just a concern. I mean, we've seen it before. We saw it, of course, with piercing. It never got there because it was just price. It was too regulated. It was too many piercings, too much time. But I don't know.
I was really involved in the piercing process. I watched what happened, and I think that what we're trying to do is vastly different what they did. They tried to categorize it. They tried to have the test that you had to come down to the state. They made it really, really hard to get a license for a piercing school. What we are trying to do is just up the base minimum of what it takes to get a tattoo license. What they did with piercing was really, really hard, and it tanked piercing in Oregon. But what they did versus what we're doing, I don't see it being on the same level. We're not categorizing things in different levels. We're not requiring teaching certificates at different levels, and we're not requiring the practical test where you have to drive down to Salem and have somebody watch you do the procedure in order to get your license. And I feel like those were the things that really bottlenecked piercing and made it so hard to get into. And we're not asking for anything like that. We're trying to double the amount of procedures and up the theory hours. You know, we only upped the theory hours by 40.
Correct.
And we took some away. So it's like, I don't see.
Correct. I'm actually, this is Cameron. I'm actually okay with upping the amount of piercings. But remember, the only reason they had to go do that practical was because nobody created a piercing school. If you're a school, that's what we're talking about right now. We're having them do practical procedures at the school. That was the reason they had to go do practical tests, because there were no schools to regulate that or to supervise that.
Pam?
If the hours goes up, I mean, from a business perspective, and we all have to be honest, nobody is going to teach for free. We could be making more money tattooing. So if the hours go up, the cost of school goes up. That's just the way it's going to be. And I agree with Cameron, we are on a slippery slope. We want to improve it. We want more procedures. We want more hours, but it is going to cost more. So it has to. You can't operate a business. The more procedures outside of the supplies, there's rent, there's us not being in our shops, there's everything else goes into the mix of running that business and running it efficiently. So of course it has to go up in cost. So it's going to make an impact.
Tom Muller, I completely understand and empathize with the cost of school having to go up. But again, we are in the health licensing office and we are trying to set a bare minimum standard to attain a tattoo license. If it means school gets more expensive, then it means school gets more expensive. Everything has gotten more expensive in the last 5 years. It's the cost of living in America right now. Like I said, it's not that I don't have empathy for running a tattoo shop in a school. I've been doing it for 8 years. I understand how expensive it is, but we are trying to focus on upping the bare minimum for our trade. And that's kind of where our focus needs to be for this part of it.
Maybe I should have prefaced this early conversation, but we don't have to come to an agreement 100%. If we want to get a range anywhere between 75 and 100 procedures, we can make that recommendation, and then ultimately it would be the board's decision. So,
okay.
If we want to give them a range of 75 to 100,
can we do 100 to 1?
I do have a, Sean News, I guess is anyone that's on this committee now, are they on the board?
Yes, we have one person, and that's Rebecca Flom.
Okay.
Yes, I'm on the board.
Okay, just for knowledge, thank you.
Erin?
I just want to say that we really need to be careful not to design requirements that are going to unintentionally favor students with money and connections and flexible schedules. I think that it's a privileged place to come from. And, if we want to encourage diversity in our industry, we need to just really watch that.
Matt?
Yeah, this can't be solved right now, but is it legal to have endorsements on your license that might solve some of these problems? So like X amount of hours you're endorsed to be a cosmetic licensed person and do the eyebrows and everything. But then after that, you need X amount of hours to actually do the art version. I don't even know if that's legal or not, but it might solve a problem in the future for people who are on that board.
Yeah, so as of right now in Oregon, there's just that one license type, and the statutes don't differentiate between cosmetic and aesthetic tattooing. So,
Yeah, but there's no way to do an endorsement like you do with your motorcycle license or anything like that? No?
Not currently, no.
Captain, is there a way, I know it brings in the legislature, but they separated aesthetics and advanced aesthetics. Why wouldn't cosmetic win in advanced, potentially, aesthetics?
That would be a question for the legislators. They're the ones that unfortunately write the bill. And
But keep in mind, in order to have advanced aesthetics, you do have to have your basic aesthetics first.
That's why, so it kind of makes sense for that.
It's kind of like the next step, like standard body piercing, and then you have your specialist 1 and your 2. So there are different levels.
And if anyone is serious about pursuing potential separation of licenses, let me know. We can talk about it after the meeting. Serious avenues to do that.
Pretty serious about that. Little you know, you just gave yourself another meeting.
All right, so 75 to 100, is that an acceptable range for everybody? And then we can let the board decide, or you want to?
I would say put the floor at 100.
Please.
I agree.
75.
I mean, we could take an unofficial vote.
I'd say 75.
Put 75 to 100, and then if we just, yeah.
Can we do 75 to 150 then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have room for negotiation.
Okay.
When's that meeting, February 23rd?
Yes. So with that in mind, how's that going to change the number of practical hours?
Well, if it's 150 per, Sean News, if it's 150 per each 50, I'm okay with like
It'd be 75 more, it'd be 20.
3 hours per procedure.
Yeah, so if we increased it by 25, we'd increase the total hours to 225.
So a range of roughly 225 to 300, depending on what the total number of procedures.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems like everybody's pretty happy with 3 hours per procedure. Sort of
Yeah.
formula.
It needs to be, yeah, at least that.
Also, Justin Preston, are we still including that caveat with the instructor per student ratio?
Yeah, that's the next thing that we'll. Okay. So 1-to-1 student ratio for the first 25 procedures, we want to make that direct supervision, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Dan Gilsdorf, is everyone happy with that, with 25 procedures, or do we want more for 1-to-1? Can we tolerate more? We'll put it that way. I'm for maxing that out to people's tolerance levels, because to me, 25 procedures of 1-to-1 is still horribly insufficient, but, so I'd love to go up on that part of it as much as people can stomach.
Sorry, I just had an sorry. Is it possible to require that supervisor that's doing the one-to-one supervision has a minimum of 2 years experience?
That's not
us.
Yeah.
The teacher side of things.
So let's say the first 50 are 1-to-1, and then after that, we can bring the break-in back down for 2-to-1 and 4-to-1.
Okay, how does everyone else feel about that?
My question would be on that, then it's, because the way that it's written is the way that it's currently written, so if we're applying it forward to larger numbers, is that the first 10 are 1-to-1, fully completed, healed, possibly touched up within 30 days, right? So then, if we're gonna increase those to 50, so then 30 times 50, so that's you have 150 days to then do all of those? Okay, and they have to be, that was my argument last time, was that, you can't possibly do 10 tattoos, see them healed and touched up, how they healed to sign off of them in 30 days. I believe Cameron agreed with me on that. Those numbers that's an untenable pace for tattooing.
This is Cameron. I totally agree with you. You can't, it's not healthy for the skin, obviously, to be digging back into it within 30 days. But one benefit to this being longer is it allows the students to see some of their healed work. I have to admit that as a student, you didn't get to see a lot of your tattoos healed, even back when I was doing this. So, I don't. One of the benefits to making the whole program longer is the students are more likely to see some of that work healed up, and maybe even get an opportunity to touch it up if it's had enough time. Yeah. And I'm with you too, Dan. Probably because it doesn't impact me as much, and I don't want to be that way about it. But I'm okay with 1-to-1 through the whole thing. The way but that's just the way we operate our school. I know that's not realistic for everybody else.
So Dan Gilsdorf, so on that, what is realistic? Pam and Aaron, you operate tattoo schools with more than one person at a time. What do you feel like you could do? Could you manage, how many students could you manage 1-to-1? How many procedures for each student do you think would work for you?
I don't have a problem with 25, the first 25, if we're going to add, if we're adding more total. And then, because if we drop the 2-to-1, no, I'm just based on what I'm seeing with my own students, though.
Yeah.
So, and again, that 150 practical, remember that 150 practical is the art. There's a lot of stuff involved in all that. There's a lot that goes into each procedure we do. So, going from 10 to 25 on the first, to do one-on-ones, we're one-on-one all the way through. We do cosmetic. It's different than body art, but I can manage that.
Yep, that'd be fine.
So Pam and Aaron, you're good with 25 and you guys are thinking 50.
Yeah, the first one-on-ones. Is that what you're thinking, Aaron?
Yeah, 25 for one-on-one, and then the rest too.
Dan Gilsdorf, just to clarify, Aaron, do you mean the entirety of the rest of the procedures 2-to-1?
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
That's great.
So at no point is 4-to-1 a possibility? It's 2-to-1 maxed out.
That'd be okay with me.
Oh, great,
Yes.
yeah, let's do that,
Yes.
for sure. I mean, that's great, because to me, this is the high leverage point against schools just cranking out students. If you put a real serious curve on how many people are allowed to be students at one time based on the number of instructors, then this seems like an even more effective way than just upping the hours. I mean, in my opinion, it took me 10 years to get competent to learn how to tattoo. So to me, like, we're talking about numbers of procedures is ridiculous. So we should be talking about years, but I understand it's not practical. Plus, people do a lot faster than I did now. But I do feel like, yeah, if people are amenable to eliminating the 4-to-1 option altogether, I'm for that 100%.
Yes.
Everyone on board with that? Cool. All right. Does anyone have any other questions or comments about the number of practical procedures and the number of practical hours?
Can we just recap and state where it's at right now?
Yeah, so for the number of practical procedures, I have a range of anywhere from 75 to 150, and then we'll let the board decide. And then for the current minimum number of practical hours, anywhere from 225 hours to 300 hours, depending on the final number of procedures. And then supervision, we had 1-to-1 student to teacher ratio for the first 25, or do you guys want to keep it 50?
We should keep it at 50.
Yeah. I'd like to go
2-to-1 after.
Okay. And what I can do is I can also, on this one, I can put a range, 25 to 50, and the board can decide.
Yeah. Yep.
And then after that, doing a 2-to-1 ratio.
Yes.
All right. Great. And just got a last few questions for you guys about how these changes are going to impact everybody. So, what kind of time frame do you think would be an appropriate level for schools trying to roll this out? What would that look like?
You mean changing their curriculum so the new stuff's in 6 months?
Okay.
How often do you guys have to like re-up your thing or redo?
Tom and Muller, every year we have to submit our audit, and if we choose to change our curriculum, we have to make special appointments, go in, get it certified. They have to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, okay it, let us know if there's any mistakes, and then it comes back to us, okay. But it takes a minute. Anytime you try to change the curriculum, there are some hoops, and HECC doesn't always have the available staff necessary to, what's that? $1,000.
Okay.
Are we going to have to pay HECC $1,000 because we all are required to now change our curriculum?
I don't.
Probably.
I believe so. I don't want to say officially, but because we are the ones making the changes and making you guys do it, that I don't believe there would be a requirement. You're just complying with new current requirements.
Is your reaccreditation or whatever it is it that a different time frame for everyone, or is it like January 1st every year?
I would have, Anna takes care of it for me, and ours is in November, but I feel like it's in that month because of when we originally
When
applied.
you did,
Yeah,
okay.
that's what I think
So
too.
it's not like we could stagger this to like, okay, we're gonna release these requirements, and then 6 months from the requirements, you have to have it with your.
So maybe it's
rollover.
by your next audit date, it needs to be.
Yeah.
Starting after 6 months.
Yeah,
I think
starting.
they give us the dates, don't they, when there's a requirement change?
Heck.
Yeah.
They did last time.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
You're correct.
Yeah, they did,
Okay.
last time, they literally, like, we had to turn in the curriculum by a certain date, and then it was whatever picked through, and then we were, cool, you're good to go.
So we set the effective date for the rules to go into effect, and then HEC gives you a certain time frame to get your updated curriculum to them.
I mean, I feel like everybody should be updating their curriculum as stuff is changing in the industry, but that's just me.
Okay, so this is Pam again. Neighbors, we have to submit every single change, no matter what it is, every March. It's March 31st, I believe, and that's when you pay all your fees. I have been trying to up my hours because we opened the school. HEC required that we name the hours that we were going to require on our transcript. And at that time, I said I couldn't do it for less than 400. I didn't do the 360, I did 400. I've been talking with them over the last 2 years even, trying to change that, and it takes an entire revision of everything to up our hours. So we're looking at some work here. They're not going to make it easy, I don't believe, just based on my own experience with trying to increase my hours for my school, because I wanted to raise them to 500, and they told me I was only allowed to increase them, I think they said 25% at a time.
Tama, because the HLO is requiring us to change it, they're obviously gonna have to waive that. They're not gonna be able to hold.
Okay, good to know.
Because the other institution that are required to be in compliance with to be open said this is a change we have to make. I think if the HECC does try to charge us for the changes, we should, as a group, be like, no, thank you.
Can the HLO like make a request to HECC?
Oh yeah, we would confirm it with them before anything moved forward.
Okay.
And then obviously students who are in the middle of the current curriculum, you would finish them out, and then any new students after a certain date would start with a new one. Okay. All right. So with the proposed changes, the increase of 45 theory hours, the increase in practical procedures and practical training hours, what kind of impact is this going to have, and who is it going to impact? So like school owners, for instance, what kind of impact will this have on you guys? Financially, time-wise?
Obviously, it's like things are gonna have to adjust, but you're gonna have to figure
Everything, the cost will go up, hours will extend, more employees, more shop. It affects everything. It's no different than any other business. If it's more hours, it's more expense. So it's going to impact us, and it's going to impact the community, because again, we see that students are struggling to get the finances to go to school anyway. That's why I say we're booking over a year out. I have students deposited already for a year from now, expecting to pay the current fee and do the current hours.
Gilsdorf here, it sounds to me like you're not hurting for students. I don't see how it getting more expensive is gonna put a limit on.
We work for it. It's not like we don't work for it. I mean, we market it, we get it set up, we have changes at the last minute, everything comes into play. It's a business like anything else. But
Sure.
there's going to be an impact on if students, I mean, what are we gonna be able to change it? Are we gonna have to change it before then? Do I need to start notifying these people? How much notice are we going to have to put this in, implement? Because I would like to know that now as I'm working on my future enrollments. I don't want to be telling people one thing and then, sorry, surprise.
Tama Miller, so Pam, you said that your school already has 400 hours in it listed?
Yes, I'm registered at 400 hours with HEC. Yep. And most of my students are graduating with closer to 500. 450 to 500 is a lot more common for me.
If you say you already have 400 hours, it's barely going to change at all for you.
It might not, but until this is solidified, I kind of need to know where I'm going as far as how I'm going to move forward with my business plan. So that's what I'm saying. Realistically, 6 months, is it a year? Because I don't want to lay anything on somebody at the last minute. They're working sometimes a year to put this together, to fit it into their life, with their jobs, with their family, and their finances. So I don't want to drop it on and say, well, sorry, you've been planning for 9 months, but now we've upped it to 600 hours.
They've explained to us that we have to go all the way through this, and the earliest they would be able to make the permanent rule become effective is to be announced, but it's after October 19th of next year. So you have almost a full year to implement this and contact your new students, and then the HECC is probably going to give us a window to update as well. So you're probably looking at a minimum of 18 months. Even
if I know that, I don't have a problem with that. I just wasn't sure if it was going to move forward, how fast it would move forward, and when will we get an actual, how long will it take for us to solidify all this and get an actual number? I just want to have a little bit of a lead time.
So Pam, if you're saying your school is already at 400 hours and you're trying to take it to 500, this shouldn't affect you because this is still less than 5. And Erin, if you're saying that you have students that are up to 10 months, that's more than the 400 hours that's going to be on this paperwork. So other than changing your paperwork to reflect that what we're already doing in studio isn't going to be affected by that much. The people that are going to be most affected are the people that are trying to push out a lot of students in a short amount of time. I understand we need to take up the AGCC on, sorry, I'm looking for it, regulation, enforcement. But if all of us are already operating at over 500 hours for our individual students, this isn't going to affect us other than having to change some of the tiny new minutia that we added to the curriculum.
Yes, that, so
This is Erin. I disagree with that. After we're done with the theory hours, then we go into the practical, and I mean, it takes these guys up to 10 months to get the 50 procedures done. So, I mean, if we add in another 50, it's going to take, it's going to cost me no less than $5,000 per student, to pay an instructor to supervise them. And then, which obviously that cost goes back to the student, because we don't charge for student tattoos. We charge a $20 supply fee. So, yeah, it's going to take a much longer. It's going to be a huge hardship on not only their finances, but on their family and their schedule. And, they're just going to have to be here for a really, really long time. And I know some of you guys just don't care about that. You want there to be a higher barrier to entry, but I'm just trying to help people go to work here.
This Cameron, this impacts me least, but I totally agree. You're forgetting this is 50 more procedures. So if she's saying 10 months to get through 50, they have to do 50 more of them. And I can think of 3 students that moved to the Eugene area when our school was there, and rented a house in Eugene to come to school from a different area of the state. So they're going to be there that much longer.
That's their choice, though.
No
one is forcing these people to go. Well, we are forcing them to go to tattoo school.
I agree, but then,
no one is forcing them to be tattooers. Like this.
So
if you want to have the bar for entry, here is what it is. Here is what it costs. Here is what you will have to do. Do you want to do this, or do you want to go be a pipe fitter? Those are
to their point. They are now going to be in town that much longer, paying rent that much longer. We're going to have to charge that much more. And again, I don't mind. I'll do it because I don't care. But that's why, to both of their points, that they don't want to false advertise or over promise to these students that now it's all changing to them. They're going to be there longer.
Yeah, Dan Gilsdorf here. 10 months for 50 tattoos sounds like an awfully long time.
It feels like
it sounds like an awfully long time between procedures, to the point where I'm not sure that if I was trying to learn something that relied pretty heavily on manual dexterity, I would retain the lesson from tattoo 1 to tattoo 2 if there was that amount of time in between. Is there a good way to compress that? Like what's causing that delay, and what do the students do in the meantime? Is there a way to compress that and fit more procedures into a shorter amount of time? Just from a pedagogical standpoint, I think that would be a much easier way to learn how to tattoo.
Sure, I could have students here 7 days a week, but they're not going to be able to work outside of the program and maintain their own lives.
I see. So it's a function of like the amount of days per week that they're available for. Okay. I understand.
This is Cameron. We've always told them if they're here full time, 6 months maybe to get through. If they have to do part time and they have a job, which most of them do, or kids, or family, 10 months a year.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I see that.
And the way we work, it's like we have a little more flexibility in our program there. There are some students that can only come in for labs to do their procedures on certain, like weekends, because they have a job, they have a family, they've got requirements that, they've got responsibilities. But then there's those that can come the extra days during the week. And it's like, so it makes sense. Some are going to get out sooner because they're able to invest more time in a shorter period. And others, it takes a lot longer because they don't have that freedom. And so increasing the amount of procedures is increasing the amount of hours overall, but it is going to put a hardship on some of those people because the majority of the people we have in our school are not children. They are adults that are trying to change fields, and they have a lot going on in their lives. So again, it's their choice if they want to do it. But it is going to make it harder for people, especially if they're traveling. They want to come to our school. They're coming from all over the state. Some are coming from out of state prior to moving here. And it's a lot when they're paying to travel and they're paying for lodging and they're paying for meals outside of home. So it does impact our enrollment. It does impact each one of these people.
Sean News. So we're hearing, so the 10 months, 50 procedures, that's about one a week. That's one tattoo a week. It's like every 6 days you're doing a tattoo, right? I do agree with Dan that, yeah, you'll forget time to time if, you're doing a tattoo here, 5-7 days go by, you do another one. Like, that's a very slow pace. If we can have a requirement where it's like 10 practicals are done in 30 days, can we have like a requirement of like 2 are done a week? Like, is that possible? Because then, Aaron, that would take, you could do 100 procedures in the same 10 months. Like, you're doubling your output within the same amount of time.
I don't know if you're considering in that one a week the theory hours that we have to do before they can start tattooing.
No. This is just the 10 months of procedures that you were talking about. This isn't.
Yeah. So we could do 20 tattoos in a day if we want to get them done that fast. Sure. But that's not what we're doing here.
That's an extreme thing. I wasn't talking about that. If you're saying they're doing one a week for 10 months, and then you would continue that pace to do another 50 at one a week, and that is creating an economic hardship on your business.
I'd be in school
forever. Have a requirement where they do 2 a week, and then that takes care of that. You're not doing another 10 months.
This is Cameron. Again, I don't know if you factored in the 210 hours of practical work, but for some of that work, they can only be here, like Pam was saying, so many days a week, so many hours a week to get through their practical procedures. That's mathematical. Once we know how many days they can be here, a week, and for how many hours a day, it might be 3 or 4 hours, 2 or 3 days a week that they're here for their practical stuff. That's locked in stone pretty much. They're committing to that. We're committing to that. After that, they then have to do the 150 hours of procedures, right? We're also saying we want them to market those procedures. So can they find a person willing to get a tattoo at that rate? It's one thing if they have a significant other that's ready to work on a sleeve or a family in the area. But if these people don't know anybody in the area, they're having to market. Yes, we can kind of get some, or we have some clients that want an old tattoo reworked or something, but then that doesn't really fall into the category of what we want. We want them to design something, consult with the client, do it from start to finish. Can they procure that or figure that out in, at the rate of 2 or 3 a week? Maybe not. Depends how many friends they have in the area.
Yeah, I understand that being able to get clients for new people to tattoo is something that's difficult to control. It's hard to predict what that timeline might look like. Yeah, I understand that.
Is there currently a maximum, because again, 20 in a day, too many. We all agree that. Is there currently a maximum per day that is set? Is there a number?
No.
Have we done that? Could we make it 2 a day? Like, could we say that the maximum amount of tattoos that you can do per day is 2 a day? So that's 6 hours. That's 1 day of class, right? So you show up and you do your 6 hours, you do your 2 tattoos. And then again, Aaron, that would be 2 a week for 10 months, you hit 100. And I'm taking the schooling as a separate thing. That already happened, that already existed. That's already its own thing.
I think I think we should. It would help with the puppy mill schools. Sorry, Pamela.
I was just going to say, but part of it with the cosmetic side, that gets a little bit sticky because, I mean, granted, like say if someone's getting new brows, oh my Lord, they're slow. 3 to 4 hours sometimes on a set of brows can happen. But we also have maintenance coming back. In our industry, it is standard procedure. Somebody's that call say, oh, I had my eyebrows done 10 years ago. My girl's not here anymore. I'd like to get in for maintenance. That's not going to be a 3 or 4 hour deal. And that lady's also, oh, while I'm there, can I get my lips done? Multiple procedures for the permanent makeup people. So we overlap. And so that makes that a little bit restrictive for us on the cosmetic side, even though I agree we shouldn't be able to crank out 10 or 12 a day. That's absolutely not. But I don't think, I think there's a little bit more to that because I know if we're doing a corrective color, that can be a whole separate procedure in itself, a corrective color. I'm not going to let them go back and do maintenance on top of that. That's going to get done. It's going to take a less amount of time, but it's still going to have to heal out. And we have to heal even longer. Our average healing time is going to be 6 weeks for permanent makeup. So see, it changes again within the wheelhouse. So.
Okay. So then Pam, sorry, Sean News over here, I keep forgetting. So then Pam, what would you say, what would be an acceptable, on the cosmetic side, what would be an acceptable cap per day? Like you're saying, because people are coming in, doing a touch up, adding in another thing, maybe I want this. So like what could be a cap? Because I do agree that limiting the daily will limit churning out of people.
There's days that I think that 4 would be the absolute max. So, because like I said, this lady's gonna come in, she wants her eyeliner and her eyebrows done. Okay. There's things we do where we overlap, just like you in cosmetology. You know, it's like processing time is what they call it. So while those brows are numbing, we're still working on eyes. That's how we roll in the shops. That's how we roll in school. And then there's going to be days where maybe we have 2 ladies come in and their maintenance and color correction. So that could be, more points there basically, because our stuff is broken down a little bit different than just body art. Permanent makeup gets really crazy. We have things like lip lines. We have upper liner. We have lower liner. We have maintenances. We have corrective colors. We have a lot of different things and they all take a different amount of time. That's how we bill them out. They qualify as procedures because they're viable procedures, but the amount of time may be more or less. They're not always 3 hours and some will be over. So it makes it really difficult to put a number.
Well, you could put a number, sorry, do the procedure.
Like, what if we limit the number of clients they have per day? Because then that would help to alleviate that situation on the cosmetic side. And then, I mean, unless someone's knocking out 20 tattoos, but then that, if they're tattooing themselves, that wouldn't help that situation.
You do 20 tattoos on yourself, it's a terrible idea.
It's a terrible idea.
Dan Kilsdorf here. Now, my understanding is that there's no specific requirement that each tattoo takes 3 hours. That's just a guideline that we're using as sort of a workable average.
Right, and that's where 4 to 6 could happen, even though it sounds puppy mill, but it's not, depending upon what it is.
Mm-hmm. But do you think that if we just use that as sort of an average and figure that some things will take a little less but still count, some things will take a little bit more and still count? For cosmetics, does that seem like a workable 3 hours seem like a workable guideline to use?
3 hours is workable. I mean, 3 hours, again, that's our average. That's how but we have things that take less. I just don't like to restrict students that are willing to put in more time, especially like on Thursdays. How many people can come in and tattoo all day on Thursday? So if I have a student that's willing to come in Thursday afternoon and do one-on-one with me, and she can crack out, she can get 4, like she can do a correction and a maintenance and maybe a new brow and another color correction, then I don't want to penalize her for it. I don't know if there's a really good way to monitor, because what we started seeing here, and I learned something with every class, I feel like. These students coming in, and because they're traveling, this gal is wanting to do all these procedures on her husband. She needs to be working on more than one person's skin, or they want to disallow tattooing themselves. So we've had to start saying, no, you can't do more than 3 on your own self, which I even with that, I struggle with it But we had to put a limit. You can't do more than say 5 on somebody else because I don't want them working on the same skin over and over and over. Even if it's separate procedures, to me, they still need to be exposed to more skin types.
I completely agree.
Yep.
Is there a way that we're
I mean, it's like if we name the procedures and who can do what, some students just are faster than others. They set up proficiently, they have their act together, they tear down proficiently, they got their paperwork, they just roll. And other people are slow as molasses. So I think it's really hard to put a time frame on these people.
So Dan Gilsdorf here. So Pamela, you're saying then that because of the realities of the way cosmetic tattooing operates and the pace it operates, that having a maximum procedures per day cap is not tenable at all?
I'm not saying it all, but I think it's going to be hard. Erin, what's your input on that? You do some of this too. I don't know who else does, but even with our body art students, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Some just are more efficient than others, and some have their act together. They come in, they're prepared. We all know that. Anybody that works with students knows there's this and this. I mean, there's the upper level and lower level and everything in between. So we're constantly adjusting. So I don't know how to put a cap on it.
Tom Muller, how about if we put a 4 procedure max on the first 50 where they're 1-to-1? So you can only do 4 procedures a day for the first 50 procedures that you do.
Are we doing 50 for, I thought we were looking at 25 to 50.
No, 50 for 1-to-1.
Yeah, those one-on-ones, I mean, it's hard to do with.
Yeah.
It's hard, I'll tell you. Those one-on-ones take a long time.
Yeah. Well, hey, Sean Lenise, I think we might be convoluting procedure numbers and then time, because it's not, that 3 hours is like a suggested, like Dan was saying. You're saying some will go quicker, some will take longer. So the time there is suggested, right? And then Pam, you said like 4 procedures a day seems to be a good amount, regardless of the time that it takes. Some will be quicker, some will be longer, right? So even if we just did a blanket, it doesn't, because I know we're back and forth on the number, the 50, the 25, whatever. But if we just did a blanket, like no more than 4 procedures for a student in a day. Like, can we do that?
I think that's a good 1-to-1.
Erin, how do you feel about that for the cosmetic?
I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem saying 2 or 3 a day. I know that would impact you, Pam, but that I don't have any problem with that. My question is where are we with this in this meeting right now? Were we just talking about how it's going to impact us, or are we still hashing these things out?
It's kind of both, but ideally we are just talking about how it's going to have an impact on communities and individuals and school owners. But we can always go back.
Fluctuation and
Tama here. I was going to ask if the HLO, or this would be more in the HECC's purview, has ever done any type of study or survey regarding how many people are getting licensed and how many people are actually effectively using their license after the fact. Because all the things that we're talking about what's effective in the school and how many people can get licensed, if these people are paying all this money and spending all this time and then getting licensed and not able to work because they don't have a confidence-based proficiency, I feel like that takes more advantage of the students than these other specifications that we're trying to put in, if that makes any sense.
Well, I don't know if there's a survey, but Captain,
Yes.
sorry, we have to keep the records of like who's getting licensed and then who's actually getting a job. Like, did you not have to do that when you submitted your paperwork?
If they get hired, but there's nothing after the initial.
That's true, the time
It's
frame.
just done, like once they are out and they have gotten licensed, other than in the initial hire, there's nothing on us to pay attention if it happens, or the state, as far as I've been able to tell, to say, especially the places that are putting out a bunch of students, are they actually going out into the field and working, or is it just a dead end way to take money for them? They get the certification, but they can't actually work. Because I hear from everybody that it's important to them that the students that are going through their school will be able to come out and work. And so if that's not happening because of the lowness of the proficiency, is that something we should be looking into?
That is a requirement for accreditation, as per what I was
That's-
looking up,
that's
that
right.
you have to have a study that proves that it is then a successful business track, or, you know, yeah.
License retention, that kind of thing.
Renewals from 1 year out versus 5 years out would be really fascinating to see.
Yeah. Yes, it would. That would be a fun rabbit hole to dive down.
Yeah, Cameron, go ahead, jump on in.
Yeah, I think you kind of covered that, but HEC does make us do the data, at least on how many of them got initial jobs going out. You're right, I don't know how far that goes down the line. Some of us that put out fewer students know, but I don't know that any stats are kept beyond that initial one. And then for me, I could see 2 procedures a day, easily. I don't know if there's a way to split that up between cause and artistic tattooing, but obviously if I have a student in here and I'm trying, it's supposed to be averaging 3 hours a day. They don't all take that long, but 6 hours of tattooing is going to be more than enough for any student on any one day.
So, Dave Gilster here. If we're gonna establish an hour cap, Pamela, it sounds like all of us are pretty comfortable with a lower than 4 number, and you mentioned 4 is sort of your tolerance level. I'd be happy with 4.
I like the idea of the client number. I thought that was a pretty good idea because, again, it's probably half of the time these women are opting for 2 services, or we're needing to do a combination of things in order to finish out their procedures. Like I say, color shaping, the reworks are huge for us in permanent makeup, and the corrective work is huge at this point in our industry. So I like the idea of maybe a minimum of the clients, like 2 clients a day.
Okay, Dan Gilsdorf, I could see that from the tattoo side, because we'll do more than 1 tattoo on a client occasionally, but it's not a considerable number of people that's gonna have a major impact, so
Yeah.
maybe 2 clients per day, you're saying, Pamela?
Yeah, it was this lady down here on the end. I'm pointing at the screen like you guys can see it. I think she's behind our all of our online attendees. So all I know is she's got a black and white striped sweater on. All I can see. No, I like that idea because that gives us a little bit more room on the cosmetic side.
Yeah, it doesn't affect
to do that, and I see where that can still work with a body artist.
Sean News, but what's gonna stop, again, if we're establishing a lowest minimum bar, what's gonna stop these schools from being like, oh, we can only do 2 people a day, you gotta do 10 on each person?
That'll at least slow them down on the weekends where they have a line out the door and they're just putting people through for minimums on the weekends. At least you're right. It'll be kind of obvious for us in the industry to watch when they change their limits per how many tattoos a client can get. It'll be telltale for us.
Like, we'll sleeve you out for $50. And then there's, 50 tiny tattoos, and you're like, yeah, but I only or 25 per 2 people, and you get them all done in a day.
But I do think the 2-person thing might help. I don't know. It's a start.
I do agree.
Tama, what if we literally write 2 clients or 4 tattoos?
Perfect.
4 procedures.
Yeah, 2 clients or 4 procedures.
That covers all things, right?
I like this.
Yeah, that's good.
I like it.
Dan Gilsdorf, Pamela, I still think that would be, because you say sometimes you can get into more than 4 procedures. So maybe we can say.
That's in the
But it's still a little gummy because, like I said, it's so hard with this 50 procedures thing for permanent makeup because they take so long, and because there's so many different ways that we present them in the industry. Like I said, it could be that client, an upper eyeliner is a procedure. A lower eyeliner is a procedure. A lip liner is a procedure, a lip fill, a lip shading, a lip blush. Those are all different procedures, and a lot of them double up. So if you're getting both top and bottom eyeliner and you're getting lip liner and lip shading, I know it sounds crazy, but no, they don't take 3 or 4 hours. Now, to do a whole top and bottom eyeliner, we're probably going to spend 3 hours. But the timing on everything is so different that it restricts us if a client's wanting to do something like that. So she's going to come in and get a top liner and a bottom liner. And then she might want to have her lips done as well. So then see, that's going to put us over 4. That's going to put us 1. Yeah, that's going to put us, that'll put us over if we do any kind of correction or anything. So again, it's hard for me to put numbers on that because it is so diverse. It's not like just we're doing a 1 inch, a 2 inch, a 4 inch. It's not the same as when we have our body art students. It's cut and dried. Permanent makeup is a little bit different. Erin?
Oh, I would just say I've never counted eyeliner top and bottom as separate procedures. You could easily count that just as one. And
we sell them that way in the shop, and so that's how we do our procedures because lots of people only want bottom.
Sure. Yeah, but if they want both at the same time, I would just count that as one.
And see, we count that as 2 separate ones because it takes 3 times as long to do them both. So again, it's what's a billable service, and there is quite a variety there. So 4 on most days sounds good to me, but there would be days I've got students that can come all day, and it's our slow day because they can't come in during the week, and we have the time for the student. Again, I'm more back to the quality of the teaching than the numbers. I'm with her one-on-one, and I never let students start out with more than 1 client a day, and then we build to 2 clients a day, and then we don't let them double up procedures until we feel like they're ready for it. But I don't know how you write that because it's a case by case with my students. Some can do it and some just can't, and I feel it's restrictive to penalize the ones that are able to move forward. And I see it in my body artists as well. Some move right along and some just don't.
Okay, so it sounds like we're heading towards a situation where we have a 2 client per day and don't specify on a number of procedures. Is that
I still think that's slowing things down, which I do believe needs to happen. And I still think it gives us a little bit more room as educators to make the decisions we'd like to make. Yes, I would be okay with that.
Okay.
Couldn't we just do a thing where there's X number of procedures a day that they can count towards their total count, but then they can still do more if there's, a client that needs more things done?
Yeah, Dan Gilsdorf, it doesn't sound like if we wrote it this way, there would be a prevention against that. There'd be more a question of, is it a good idea for somebody to come in and get 12 artistic tattoos at once and count that as 12 procedures? Is the student really getting 12 procedures worth of education out of that? And I would say no, considering setup, down, managing care instructions as part of the learning process.
We think about a procedure the way the state looks at it. What's the most important thing for the state? Safety and sanitation and the welfare of the client. They're not looking at the art. They wouldn't know good art versus bad art. What they care is these students know how to effectively do their paperwork, that they know how to do correct setups and teardowns and all the stuff that goes in between. But I feel like the art, cosmetic or otherwise, I feel like that is not where the state is at. Where they're at is protection on the safety and sanitation issue and the legal issues.
I totally agree. And
I don't like that, but that's the way I think it is.
This is Cameron. So the concern with that, Pamela, is that the puppy mill schools that are doing this artistically are going to just do multiple procedures on the same person. They're not even going to make it.
And they're not going to do it. Exactly.
So if by doing what Dan's going for, I think is a great idea, even if it does hurt you a little bit, my argument would be, I still don't know that they're going to comply because there's no regulation, but at least there'd be that paper trail where they're only allowed 2 clients a day or 4 procedures a day. And they're still going to be trying to make it, they're going to try to make it look like 2 clients are each getting 2 tattoos a day, and they're going to try to max it out. But I'm sorry, it might handicap you, but this might actually slow them down from just pumping people through, because they're not making them set up and tear down for every procedure. If it's on.
And we've had that conversation with students. It's like, no, you can't do 5 on 1.
Right.
You can do 5 on 1 person, but you can't do them all at the same time, because the point is, are you doing the aftercare? Are you doing the good setup? How are you handling all of it? And so procedurally, that's where that comes in. But there are times where we have clients that have multiple procedures. And so, and like I said, cosmetically, it's probably more common. I mean, we have a lot of people want to come in and get a little this and a little that, but I think, yeah, it affects us more on the cosmetic side of our training than it does on the body art side. I totally agree.
Quick question, Cameron. Sorry, Dan. Quick question. Do we have the puppy mill problem with cosmetic tattooing that we're experiencing with artistic? Is that a thing?
I hear a lot of crazy things, but unless I see it with my own eyes, I hate to call judgment. I know that they're.
I don't know.
I just know that I get a lot of calls. I went to school, I did this, and can you help me? I'll leave it at that. So there's got to be some issues, but I can't speak to it because I'm not really.
Sorry, Dan.
We all feel it, we all feel it coming in our shops.
I agree totally with Cameron. My understanding as you describe it, Pamela, is that a 4 procedure cap would place a limitation on your students in some cases, but it sounds like those cases are not.
Four is a pretty decent number for me, because I try to limit my students to that anyway.
Okay, so I propose that we do that we do, what do we say, two clients or four procedures a day cap.
Everyone okay with that?
Agreed.
And I feel like that's a good compromise for balancing people's safety and the educational priorities that we have with the practical realities of operating this school, especially on the cosmetic
This is
side.
Tricia, and for rule writing, they will specify, do we want this and or? Do we want it 2 clients and 4 hours, or 2 clients or 4 hours, or 4 procedures?
I think 4 is the way to go. Because then, you could tattoo 1 tattoo on 4 people, or you could do 4 tattoos on 1 person, like Pamela's saying. And even for that, like you said, sometimes, if a top eye is 1, bottom is 1, and then a whole set of lips is 3 or something, right? Where it's like a line filler.
It'd be 2 max, but lips not as, 2 max on lips, I'd say.
What I'm saying is, if people are dipping in and they're like, technically they wanted 5 procedures, that's not stopping you from doing that. It's just that the 4 would count. So on that rare occasion where someone does end up going over the line, you're still providing that service for the client. The student is still learning, but the expectation there is like, okay, we can do all of this. It's great for you. That's kind of bonus, but only 4 of them count.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they would still get the hours as well. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can work with that. I think I can work with that on both sides. That's
great.
So Daniel, so if the question that started all this was the impact.
I kind of briefly touched on it, but.
Yeah. I don't know the first thing about cosmetic tattooing nor tattoo schools, so I don't have a whole lot to say about the impact other than that. It seems to me that the barriers, like I'm concerned with young tattooers and fostering their success, and I totally hear you guys about the barrier that a high cost of entry, like dollar cost of entry represents. But I also think that getting a license for cheap and then never getting a job out of it is a similar barrier to entry to actually a career in the tattoo field. And I personally think it's probably worth the sacrifice of having to charge a little bit more money up front than having underqualified people come out with the expectation of getting a job and not getting it. That seems like the harsher reality for students than a known quantity of a higher upfront cost and a higher upfront time commitment.
affecting their education. Yes.
I do think it would certainly increase their chances of employability, which would go a long way in offsetting that initial financial cost also.
Yes.
Like, I'm not for a financial barrier to entry to tattooing at all. But I understand that with the schools, the laws that they are, we have no choice. There's no other way for us to differentiate. There's no other way for schools to operate that doesn't run a profit. At the same time, the profitability of tattoo schools is not really the purview of this committee in the curriculum. So, to me, the highest priority is that tattoos are being done safely and that young students, I say young not so much in age, but in terms of their tattoo careers, new incoming people have what represents an actual valuable opportunity. And if that valuable opportunity has to cost a little bit more money and a little bit more time up front, it seems worth that sacrifice to me to have it represent a more actually valuable opportunity at the back end when they go to enter into the field and have a career in tattooing.
It also leads to a higher respect for the industry as a whole. Olivia, are we discussing the financial impacts of the sustainability of tattooing in Oregon with so many students? Like, is this just like, are we mainly examining how this will impact students, or like what industry as a whole, or the industry as a whole?
The industry saturation as a whole.
Right.
Yes.
Because we've been, coming to the board for 8 years now, waving the flag of like, this is not sustainable.
So it's going to be how these changes that you guys are proposing are going to affect the industry. That includes students, school owners, shop owners, artists. So anything that you guys can think of where this may impact them, now would be the time to.
One more follow-up thought. So I believe that this will impact the community of working tattooers positively because we're putting less responsibility on shop owners and tattoo shops to fill the gap in education that these schools aren't doing, because it's kind of either on us to then take somebody who is like basically an apprentice in order to make them hireable. Whereas if we raise the bar in this sense, then they come to us hopefully potentially more hireable, and that means that we're still fostering young artists, but it's the responsibility to make them hireable isn't on us.
Especially with like fundamentals, no matter what, you have fundamentals
that they can take a walk in
completely. Yeah. And you not be concerned about the reputation of your shop, or the
safety.
cleanliness of the shop, the safety of your shop. Yeah.
I think also, if we are, it would be a twofold thing of if we are upping the requirements like we're talking about, then you will, yes, some people will fall out or opt out. If it is more expensive, there's a financial barrier or the time barrier, but then conceivably you would cultivate more students that want to do this more. It'll cut out some of that bottom percentage, which then would, help our industry by, you have more people that are committed and passionate about what they're doing. So they will seek out more education, higher education, seek out to work in shops where they can progress more. But then also by doing that, like we've said with, finding people to tattoo, only so many people are gonna get tattooed. Like it is a thing. And right now, more people are getting tattooed than ever. Like this is the most. But the more people that are becoming licensed tattooers is also then cutting that pie into smaller and smaller pieces. So it's almost a disservice to the students to say, hey, you take this course, you're a tattooer, now you can have a job. And if we're putting out lots and lots of them, going by the schools that are churning them out, then you're creating lots and lots and lots and lots of competition for the same level students, which I get is in capitalism, the economic issue. But by doing these types of things and slowing it down a little bit, it'll ease that burden on those students coming out
as well. That makes sense. And Gilsdorf here. I mean, there's no question that tattooing in Oregon is a super saturated field, and we're all feeling the effects of that right now, especially. But I don't think it's the schools that caused that. This is what we assumed was going to happen when the schools started, whatever that was, 15, 20 years ago. We thought, oh, this is gonna be the worst thing since hepatitis. It's like gonna be totally overrun and completely oversaturated, and that is true. But it's not only Oregon. This is everywhere in the United States. And Oregon does not have particular difference in its saturation of tattoo practitioners per client as other places. So I don't know that making tweaks to the curriculum in the tattoo schools is going to have a massive effect on the saturation in the field in the long run.
I think, oh gosh, I hate to admit this, but I'm old enough. I remember when every single package we got for tattoo supplies had a big label on it that says, "We do not ship to prisons, do not deliver to prisons." And I was like, but you know, when Amazon happened, now everybody can get a kit and start. That's part of it. You know, look at all of our neighboring states. Look at the laws. There's someone on every street corner in Washington tattooing on their couch or their lawn chair. But the thing is, living in Oregon, our standards are higher. I know we feel like we're saturated in Oregon, but look at some of the other states. And I mean, I teach in a lot of different places across the country, advanced classes, and I hear it every day. But at least we have a requirement. At least we have fundamental training. And I think that does protect us to a certain point in our industry, because not just everybody, I mean, they may be tattooing illegally, but they're not able to market. They're not able to open a facility and tattoo. So it gives us a degree of protection in our industry. And I feel like, I mean, I'm thrilled that we have what we have in Oregon, because I do believe it helps support a stronger industry. No matter how much we have to hash at this level over curriculum, it's a good thing we have it, because I know that many states have absolutely nothing.
I totally agree, and I think that it's yeah, as the level of protection of the industry, and compared to what some other states are coming up with their laws now, and they're just feeling around in the dark at this stage of the game, it's a mess. A mess.
It is. It is.
We're doing good. I mean, I think I'm very thankful to be able to deal with stuff at this level. And
yeah, because in Washington, you can apply right now, anybody, send the governor your $275, I think it is, and you can print your license and be tattooing legally this afternoon. Pathetic.
I just came from Montana like about a year ago is when I got licensed here for both tattooing and piercing. And the county I'm in out there, Yellowstone County, it's where Billings is at. I still have a facility there. The whole reason I started looking towards Oregon in the first place is because there is the standard here. It does kind of have that going for it. And I just kind of wanted to be a part of it. So it is nice to be able to see that there are people that do care about the industry and putting the work in. So like it I know that it is debated and there are still hurdles with it, but those hurdles are minor compared to places like Montana, where all you need is your first aid certificate and bloodborne pathogens and $250 a year. And I have seen some atrocious things like such as recent skin grafts that we're still dealing with in local industry that like has become lore. But like having that here, I think is a good thing. But I think there still is room like grow. So I appreciate being a part of this. So thank you.
I agree. I think we're doing a good job here. I think that as an organization, I'm hoping that the HECC is sort of pressed to take these things a little bit more seriously. I mean, I don't want to pat us on the back too much here. There was a 5% pass rate in 2019 for the bloodborne and biohazard safety portion of the exam. And those people still get licensed, and they're coming from schools. So I still, you know, we're doing a lot here, but there's still a lot to be like addressed. And I think a lot of that's going to come from the HECC, and I'm hoping that there's more of this kind of conversation that's sort of taken over to that side.
I also think with the test, Kevin, I'm sorry, we have to address
the test.
It's coming.
It's in February,
And I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yes, it's on the top of the list. But I will be having a meeting with HEC prior to any of this becoming permanent, having just a general conversation, making them aware of what's gonna happen, get their feedback on any things that might be a problem for them, and then we'll move forward with the board.
Can you mention that puppy mill was used throughout this
37
whole
times.
thing a bunch of times?
Yeah.
And I think that's on them. It's now defined by the HLO.
Official board definitions. Okay, so just have a couple more things, then we'll wrap it up. One quick question. Currently, it's called the course of study. Does anyone have an issue if it's renamed a curriculum?
No.
Okay. It fits the definition of a curriculum, and it reduces just kind of that back and forth confusion.
Yeah.
People reaching out to me wanting to open a school, call it a curriculum. It is, but technically it's a course of study, so that's what I call it. So bookkeeping wise, I think just calling it a curriculum is a good way to go. And then lastly, we'll do public comment, and then I'll do a quick spiel if we've got anybody commenting. So at this time, the Tattoo Course of Study Review Committee will be hearing public and interested parties' feedback. Public comment is limited to matters listed on the meeting agenda or topics relevant to what this committee has statutory authority to regulate. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes and will not be allowed if they're disruptive to the committee's conduct of its business. If you are called on to comment, HLO staff will request the public member unmute themselves. HLO reserves the right to end a person's comment early and have HLO staff mute the public member if the comment does not pertain to matters listed on the meeting agenda or topics relevant to what this committee has authority to regulate. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a comment? If so, please raise your hand or use the Zoom raise hand feature and wait to be acknowledged.
I'm looking.
Nobody?
Nothing so far.
Olivia?
Olivia Britsweet, I want to thank everybody again for all of the amazing discussion. And I also want to kind of put it out there that like when we do go to HEC, let's try to keep in touch because we've already kind of hashed out the issues, how the HEC issues are impacting the tattoo schools and all of that. So we all together kind of have a really amazing case to bring them already. So I propose that we either like keep connecting and keep in touch, or Tama and Jesse and I have an Instagram called Reform Oregon Tattooing where we post seminars. We've posted bulletins from meetings in the past. So you can always reach us on there as well. And we will definitely be following up on the HACC stuff. So feel free to follow us on Reform Oregon Tattooing on Instagram. And that is like just kind of been able to give us a mouthpiece to distill this information to the public and to the working tattooers of Oregon.
With that being said, again, these changes are going to be brought to the board at the February 23rd meeting. We'll be talking about all of it, and again, the rollout plan. Our goal is to not make it an overnight thing. We want to ensure that everyone has plenty of time to adjust. Again, I don't have an exact date of how long we want to make that, but the board will talk about it, and then if any of you guys want to make a public comment at that meeting to give any suggestions, that would be great, but we're going to give it a long time to get people adjusted, so.
I have a question. You have talked at length about how we're gonna redo the test and anybody that applied. Are you guys gonna do the same thing you did for this, where you send out a letter that says, would you like to be eligible to work on a committee for the test? So it'll just be the same process as this?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm grateful to all of you. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say, thank all of you guys. This is my first committee, and you all have made it so easy, and just it's been a good first experience. So thank you all for that.
Yeah, thank you for listening. After 8 years of coming to these meetings.
Can I ask one, but real quick again, what was that Instagram? Is it Reform? It's not Reform Oregon Tattooing, is that the one?
Yes.
Reform Oregon Tattooing? Okay, I just want to make sure I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, any continued ed that you know of or that you're doing for yourself or your students that's available to the public, share that with us because we can send it out to all the artists that follow. That's a lot of what we do is just like making that stuff more accessible because everybody's always asking when continued ed is available and that kind of stuff.
What happens at these meetings, what we're doing to try and change the things we don't like. So that's kind of its sole function.
Thank you for that. That's awesome.
All right, so the Tattoo Course of Study Review Committee meeting is adjourning at 12:15 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Bye.